conducted remotely via WebEx and physically in the Council Chamber, Guildhall, on Thursday, the 21st of July 2022 at 4 p.m. So I'll commence just in terms of attendance. Alderman Devaney.
Here, Karen.
Alderman Guy. Alderman Kerrigan. Councillor Boyd. Michaela.
I'm here, Karen, in the Guildhall.
Thank you. Councillor Doyle.
Here, Karen.
Councillor Edwards.
Here, Karen.
Councillor Farrell.
Here, Karen.
Councillor Ferguson.
Here, Karen.
And Councillor Fleming.
Shaw, Karen.
Councillor Harkin. Councillor Jackson.
And Shaw, Karen.
Councillor McGinley.
And Shaw, Karen.
Councillor Sonoya Barr.
Here, Karen.
And Councillor Tierney.
Here, Karen, in the Guildhall.
Okay, thank you, members.
Thank you, Karen. Item 3 is a broadcasting statement, so I'm going to read out the broadcasting statement to members. I would like to remind everyone present at this meeting in the Guildhall or in attendance remotely that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. This broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with our protocol. Due to your attendance at this meeting, you're consenting to being filmed and to use of and storage of those images for broadcasting and training purposes and for the purposes of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. Members and approved speakers are reminded to only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to highlight a request to speak. A copy of the Council's privacy notice can be found on the Council website at derryandstrabane.com. Okay, members, good afternoon. Item 4 is declaration of members' interests. If you want to declare any interest now, you can put them into the chat box or let me know in the Guildhall.
Chair, Alderman Kerrigan here. I'm just to record that I am present. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, noted. Alderman Kerrigan. Okay, Councillor Fleming.
Thank you, Chair. Item 11, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Fleming. And I think that's it. If anyone wants to raise a declaration of interest, they can also do it as an item arises during the meeting. Members, moving on to item 5, which is a deputation from ARC Fitness, and we have Gary, or is it Gaz Rutherford, on the line here, and I just want to give you a warm welcome to Council and to this committee. Or Gary, or is it Gary or Gaz? Sorry.
I'll take. We'll go forward. We'll go, Gary.
Good stuff. So we're going to get your presentation up on screen here. I'll let you do your presentation, then we'll take some questions and comments from members afterwards, if that's okay. But once that's up on screen, you can work away there, guys.
Happy days. Guys, look, thank you very much for the invite to come and address the Health and Community Committee. So I'll take you through a very brief presentation, guys. I'll rattle through it and I'll allow you a good bit of time for questions. Okay, so before we get started, so my name's Gary Rutherford and I'm the founder and the project development manager for ARC Fitness, an addiction recovery service based here in Derry / Londonderry. And if you just click on through that slide, you'll see it comes up there that I'm a lot of different things. So I'm a registered mental health nurse. Okay, I worked in the Western Trust for 5 years. This year I became the Royal College of Nursing's Nurse of the Year, which was a massive accolade within the profession. I'm also an addiction nurse therapist. I worked in Moodley House as a Band 6 addiction nurse. And I'm also a personal trainer, hence why I'm wearing the funny hat. Okay, so I'm a lot of different things. Okay, and I always add this last one at the end as like a caveat. Okay, because I'm also a person of long-term recovery from drug and alcohol addiction. This August, I'll be 11 years clean and sober, drug and alcohol free, following various stays in rehabilitation centres, detox units, all of those things that we imagine that goes with addiction. I was lucky enough to get the right help, the right support at the right time, went back and retrained. And the reason I always leave that to the end, guys, is because we live in a culture and a society that would define us by our problem. And I'm a lot more than somebody who struggled with an addiction. And that's a lot of the work that we do within our organization, is to try and change this conversation and perception of addiction within our society. If we move on to the next slide, please. So very briefly, what is ARC Fitness? As I mentioned, we are an addiction recovery service based in Derry, Londonderry. Okay, we are a not-for-profit organisation, social enterprise with community standing. Okay, what we do is we provide individuals, family members, and the wider community with help, support, and guidance in relation to substance misuse. What's different about us is that obviously we use physical activity as the vehicle to drive the work that we do. So we don't just get people into our gym and we just don't rebuild their physical health. We actually take them through programs of education, support, counselling and therapy to help people get back on that road to recovery. We now do work in schools, we do work in communities, we do work in businesses. But we offer this real kind of safe and supportive environment that respects dignity, non-judgmental, and we instill hope that recovery is possible. So that's us in a nutshell, okay? The next slide, if we can move on, I'll give you a little bit of the timeline. It's been very fast. I set ARC up as a Facebook page 3.5 years ago, whilst I was still working as a nurse in the Western Trust. We are now in our second premises since then. I have now left my substantive post within the Trust as a nurse to do this full time. And we are based in a unit in the Bay Road Business Park. Again, much bigger premises. That's to try and facilitate the need and the demand for the services that we provide. Okay, so it's been a bit of a whirlwind and we're here and it's been pretty exciting, stressful as well, but we're doing some really good things. So if you could move on to the next slide. Thank you. What makes us a little bit unique is the team that we have. So we have a team of 14. 2 of those are full-time. So there's 2 full-time salaried staff. The rest of them are facilitators. But within our team, we have 3 mental health nurses and 2 accredited therapists, 1 CBT and 1 dynamic running therapy. We also have peer support workers who have done our program, who have maintained their sobriety, who now facilitate for us, who are now living and giving that lived experience back. And we also have personal trainers, sports massage therapists. So we have a really wide variety of team, which means we can do a lot. So addiction is our core focus, but we can also do health and well-being. We can do mental health issues. We can do a lot of other things. And as I said, the premises that we're now in allows us to facilitate a lot of different things. We move on to the next slide, please. Over the last 3.5 years, we've worked really hard to build our reputation and our credibility within, not just within our city, but also within the wider communities that we work in. And we've made some really good partnerships and collaborations over that time. At present, we are collaborating with the Western Health and Social Care Trust. We work with the Community Forensic Mental Health team, Social Works Family Intervention team, the multidisciplinary teams, so the GP Federation. We have direct referral links with probation, with the PSNI. We are part of the Northern Ireland Drug and Alcohol Alliance. So, guys, we've made a point of recognising that working in partnership is really important, because although we have our own set of experience, we don't have all of the answers. But we're very good at working with other people who can actually add on to the quality of the service that we are doing. So we will continue to strive forward to work in partnership with as many organisations as we can to support the people that are coming into contact with our service. Next slide. So we actually do quite a lot for an organisation this young and actually with only 2 full-time members of staff. We started off offering a recovery program, 6-week structured recovery program, 5 days a week, where individuals would come in, they would take part in physical activity, they would take part in the education, they would do group therapy sessions, one-to-one therapy sessions, and that was our core offering at the time whenever we started. We now do a lot more. So outside of that specific addiction recovery program for individuals, we run family support programs now. We now have a community of over 50 family members who have done a family support group that remain connected to offer help and support to them. We provide therapy, running therapy, CBT therapy, addiction therapy. We deliver workshops in communities, schools. We run education workshops. We run mental health workshops. Education campaigns are a big thing for us because we're very much about highlighting the need to tackle how we talk about addiction and the stigma that's associated with it. So we'll be very vocal about some of the work that we do. We run employee assistance programs. So we've recognized that for us to remain here, we have to work really hard because funding is not always available. So we partner with E&I. So we actually provide an employee assistance service for their employees. So any of their employees that struggle with substance misuse or mental health issues come directly to us, bypass management, hence removing that stigma of having to talk to someone else about their problems. So we've done quite a lot, and we have a lot that we really want to do. But we want to make sure that everything we do it really well, and we stick to our core values. Next slide, please. So how do you access the service that we provide? Fundamentally, how we were set up, it was self-referral. And that's a really great thing because people can come directly to us. But the issue with that is, where does the funding come from? Does the individual pay for the service? Does funding pay for the service? And that's always going to be a challenge that we're going to have to navigate. So people self-refer, but what has happened now, especially within the last year and a half, GPs are referring, Woodley House, the addiction services are referring, all the community organisations are referring, everybody is referring. So what happens is, we now have a waiting list of over 200 people, and that's shocking, but that's the reality. And for somebody who has had to access services in the past, that's a really frustrating place to be, back at a point where you've reached a bottleneck. So that's how people are accessing our service just now. We've increased the size of our team, increased the size of our premises to try and meet that demand, but the demand keeps on growing because the problem that we're dealing with is quite big, especially in our city, Northern Ireland as a whole. Next slide, please. It was very important whenever I said ARC-up that it wasn't just my opinion, because we all have them. And I needed to make sure that we measured everything that we did, that we had outcomes, that we evaluated, that we could turn around and say, well, this is exactly what happens when people come here. So we connected with King's College in London and Queen's University, and we started measuring the impact that we were having on our programs. We published that as research in the Journal of Mental Health Nursing last year, and we continue to measure that going forward. But we see people getting fitter, we see people getting healthier, we see people losing weight, BMIs coming down, reducing the risks of cardiac issues. We see improved body mechanics, people that haven't been maintaining their muscle structure because of years of drinking starting to become stronger again. These are just some of the physical health outcomes that we can see and measure. Next slide. The mental health outcomes are massive for what we do. We know that there's a correlation between physical activity and mental health. We understand the science and the biology, but we see that here on the ground. We track people's mood from start to finish. We see improvements. We track anxiety levels. We see improvements. We're watching people connect with people in a community where people are just trying to strive to be better. We're seeing people become more resilient, and we're watching those friendships form. Because addiction disconnects people and pushes people away, it isolates them. The goal of ARC is to pull that all back in again, because you don't heal in isolation, you heal in community. Next slide. Quality of life. And loads of people ask me, I remember I delivered a presentation to the parliamentary subgroup, and the answer was, what's your success rate? And it's a really frustrating question, because I can tell you how many people complete the program, but what do we determine success as? For us, we get to see on the ground people returning back to education, going back to the tech on a scholarship that we've created with them, people getting their children back who are maybe in kinship care, people who are going on to become recovery coaches, professionally qualified recovery coaches, and families becoming reunited again. That's what we get to see on the ground. So that's what we determine success. And it's a really difficult sphere to work in, because addiction is complex and complicated. But that's how we measure. We give people opportunity, and we give them a chance to change, and we try and give them the most opportunities that we can utilize in the community. Like, for example, connect them with the Northwest Regional College to allow 2 people a semester to take part in their physical activity qualifications, their level 2, their level 3 personal training qualifications, so they can then have a profession if they wanted to. So it's about trying to give people more than just sobriety and drug and alcohol, being drug and alcohol free. Next slide. So what does the future look like? The demand is still going to be there. We still want to meet the need of the people that need it the most, and that is our local community, and we want to service them. But also, we'll always collaborate. We'll always reach out to universities. We'll be doing joint progress or projects. Research is massive. I think the more research we do in the field of addiction, the more we can implement the work that we do, and also trying to find sustained funding. Whenever ARC was set up, the drug and alcohol strategy went out for consultation. So they only refunded originally tendered service, which means we were unable to apply for funding from the Public Health Agency, for example. So we've had to work really hard to grow and sustain ourselves here. And we're doing quite well with that. But again, it always comes with the, well, what's going to happen next year or what's going to happen the year after. So sustained funding is always going to be something that we'll be working towards. And then regional growth. The model that we run off is really effective. It's not difficult to implement, but it needs to be done right. But imagine there was access to something like this in the other regions that we're working in. Strabane might as well be in Belfast, because trying to get people to us from Strabane is difficult. But imagine we could go to Strabane or Omagh or Enniskillen. So that's what we're looking for, guys. We have big plans, big ideas, but our focus is getting Derry right for the people that are here that need us the most. So look, guys, that was a whistle-stop tour. I can talk about ARC all day, every day, so I'm not going to do that because I want to open it up for questions, because I'm sure there's plenty out there. So that's the end of the presentation. I think we'll just open the floor for questions now, if that's okay.
Yep, thank you. Thanks for that, guys. It's definitely very informative. I'll leave my comments to the end, but I'll bring in some of our councillors now. The first indicated speaker is Councillor Doyle.
Hiya.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, guys. I have to say, everybody in the city and district knows you at this stage and knows the work that ARC are doing, and it's fantastic. And I'm really glad to see you here today. As chair, as secretary of the Dairy Detox campaign, we've been doing a lot of work over the last number of years. I know you've done some work with Tamsin as well in the past of trying to progress that piece of work as well. And I suppose to let you and others know that that there's a needs assessment going to be carried out by the Western Health Social Care Trust over the next number of months. The tender for it is actually going out, I think, next week. We had a discussion with the Strategic Planning and Performance Group at the Health and Social Care team during the week. So that's progressing as well. Of course, we need an executive back to do that, but that piece of work is progressing as well, because I think the work that you're doing is different to the point of it takes from what I'm reading of it and from what people who have used your service have told me, it's a more holistic approach in terms of health and social care and the addiction aspect of it as well. And progressing on the other parts of life. I mean, you know yourself, at times whenever we send people to services that are run by the health and social care, they'll get a very specific service and then they're kind of set free out into the community. And there's no backup for them. There's no support in the long term. I'm really keen to see what we can do to help. I know you mentioned there about funding. I would definitely, I'll send you the details of that tender when it comes out, because I mean, who knows better in terms of needs assessment than probably yourselves. I would do no harm maybe to have a look at that.
Thank you. No,
in terms of
thank you for that.
Yep, no problem. And in terms of, look, I don't have any questions. What I would say is I'm really grateful, and I know that many of my constituents have used your service, and genuinely I have seen their lives completely changed. People who were walking around the town at times like zombies at the weekend, who are now, like you say, able to get their families back, able to hold down a job, and to progress themselves in terms of learning as well. So I'm really grateful, and just behalf of my party, I'm very grateful for the work that you and your team do. And I'll come back to you about that tender as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. And it's great to see that being pushed forward. This is an issue that has got many different forks as such, and we're a part of it. We're not a detox service. I mean, that's the thing, and that we're a recovery service, so we're not a crisis service, and we have to be very clear about that too moving forward. Because what happens is you become almost the point of call for every single thing to do with addiction. And that's going to be the challenge that we face. But no, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it, and please do send that stuff on.
Thanks for that. The next speaker is Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks to Gaz for coming along and making this presentation. Gaz will know that I've followed very closely the lifespan of ARC. I know a number of people who have used the service, and I've witnessed their lives literally change, and those people get their life back again, reconnect with their families, and build positive relationships from the work that they had been involved in with ARC. Guys, there was a number of very interesting points that were raised within your presentation, but one that I found probably the most interesting, and I'm going to talk about a number of them, and I don't want to single any out, but one that I found most interesting that you didn't actually touch on is where it said ARC Fitness, #no shame. And I think that's key to anybody and for anybody who's trying to overcome addiction and mental health issues, is that they know that as soon as they reach the doors of ARC, that there is no shame, that everyone is there to try and help and to try and lend support. And I think part of the unique selling point, if you like, of ARC is the fact that, guys, you have been so open yourself about your own struggles and your own difficulties. And I think that that is what makes ARC that little bit different from all of the other services, albeit invaluable that they are, that run across the city and district. You also talked about the timeline of ARC, and anyone who has watched the progress on social media, or who has talked to anyone who has been involved with ARC, will know very clearly that, you know, the service has grown, and probably, and not speaking for you, but probably outgrowing your expectations so quickly, but also frightening that it has had to grow so quick, because the need for the service is out there. And I think that we all have a responsibility to help and to do all we can to put our shoulders to the wheel to make sure that those services are there. I think it was also very interesting to see that, you know, very clearly pointing out for such a young organisation, and this isn't to seem patronising in any stretch of the imagination, but such a young organisation, they have such a high profile within the city over such a short period of time, and very quickly build positive working relationships with key partners across the city who know exactly where people may be finding that weakness and may need that help and support, like the probation service and other services like that. I found it very interesting that also part of your presentation, and very key to not only the presentation, but the information that we see regularly on social media, is the family support program, and making sure that, you know, we often say that mental health issues and addiction doesn't only impact the individual, it impacts the family and the wider family, and they have that family support program at the very centre of the recovery process. I think is also an added benefit to people who are going to be using that service. But I'm not in any way teaching my granny how to suck eggs. I'm literally pointing out the things that I see that I think make ARC that little bit different. I was very interested to hear about the employee assistance program, and around that, is that only for employees of E&I where that service is available? Because, you know, when we talk, I suppose it's similar to the family support program, when we talk about it impacting the wider family. You know, if you're working with someone for 37 and a half, 40 hours a week, and you see and witness the difficulties or the struggles that they're going through, that has to have an impact on you and in your own mental health as well. And having that service there, I think would be good as a service that we could stretch out to other employees, and maybe something that we should be looking at within council as an employer of approximately 12 or 1,300 people across the city and district. It is one of the larger employers, and I think it's something that, you know, your last slide talked about council support. it's something I think that we should be looking at as well, because it's definitely there. Funding, as you know, is always going to be an issue. Unfortunately, it always has been an issue. And, you'll know, Gaz, around the difficulties that the Community Crisis Intervention Service had. We all know, sitting here, that there is a huge need in this city and district for an addiction service that is helping people tackle and overcome their addiction. And the very fact that central government think it's okay to fund organisations a month at a time, 3 months at a time, and have them hanging on a shoestring, whenever other organisations doing a similar role in other parts of the north are getting concrete funding and able to plan for 1, 2 and 3 years in advance. Unfortunately, funding is always going to be a difficulty. But I think what we need to do is everybody work together to make sure that we are putting a strong lobby together when and if the executive comes back. That we have made the arguments around why we need these addiction services. The health minister, I spoke to him personally a number of times about the need for support for people who are suffering from addiction. He knows and he understands, but he needs to support new organisations like yourself who are coming up with new ways to tackle addiction around the fitness programmes and all of that, which are unique and which have got a vision to grow not only in Derry and Strabane, but across the north as well. From our point of view, and I hope that you know this and understand, we have always, since your inception, been a big supporter of ARC. We will continue to do that, and anything that we can do within the SDLP group to support the work that you are involved in, we will be standing ready and waiting to offer any support we can. On behalf of our group, I formally want to thank you for the work that you've been involved in. And if there is anything that we can do, we look forward to continuing to work as much as we can with yourself to help people who are suffering from addiction across the city and district. But thanks very much for your presentation and coming along today, guys. Thank you.
Brian, thank you very much. Kind comments there. Thank you so much. Just to touch on your point there, like, this is a social issue. It's not just an individual issue. This is social. This affects families, employers, schools. And to touch on what you were asking about that employee assistance, it just happens to be in one employer, and that was off the back of us attending there to deliver some workshops on health and wellness. We recognised the need, so we went in and we asked the question, was it possible? And it is. And like, let's be fair, I mean, drug and alcohol use, the impacts of that, whether that's by the individual or the families, is impacted by our employees. If it's impacted by that, it's going to affect the organisation. So for us to be able to take that off the employer's kind of table and take that over is a good thing moving forward. So it's not just for that one particular organisation. So please, yes, if you do think of yourselves or organisations, it is something that is out there.
Thank you for that. The next indicated speaker is Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Gary, for joining us today and taking time out. And on behalf of People Before Profit, we want to thank you for bringing your expertise and your passion to this, because it is making a difference. You're making a difference, and I know you want to expand this right across the north, and we should figure out what we can do to help that. But we need you here in Derry. And I think you know that, because look, you probably see that we've declared a mental health crisis here, we've declared a hardship crisis here, and we know that a lot of people are struggling. So whatever we can do and whatever expertise and passion people are bringing to try and get people back on their feet, they need to have a platform, and they need to be given the help as well to make it a success. And it also, from our point of view as well, as you said, look, getting the RCN's Nurse of the Year award, that is just a tremendous achievement, and I'm glad that you got that, but also that that you received that recognition, because to be judged by your peers is huge, and that's your peers and who are looking at the work that you're doing, and it's a tremendous achievement. So fair play to you for getting that, and it's it's just brilliant. So I guess, look, we know the great work that you're doing. I suppose I just had a couple of questions, because for us, this is an opportunity for everybody to learn about what you do, but this is your platform as well in terms of getting things across to the councillors to try and move things forward. So, if there's a ask that you want to put forward today for the councillors, I'd like to hear that. If there's something that that the Western Trust can be doing more, and there's probably a lot, but maybe if there's something you're thinking about today that you'd like to highlight, that would be useful to hear. I suppose I would also, if you want to, just in terms of the impact that the cost of living crisis is having and some of the work that you're doing, that would be useful to hear. And I know you have this conference planned now for September 7th, the Recovery in Motion. So it'd be good to hear about that as well, and if there's anything the council can do to help you with that. But that conference itself is a huge event, and that is going to help to put ARC on the map as well, and the work that it's doing, and hopefully allow more people to see the positive work that you're doing, and maybe help more people make their way to you to get that help that these are offering. So I don't want to speak too long, because I want to hand things back to yourself. But yeah, if there's anything, thanks for being here today, and thanks for the work that you're doing. And we wish you all the success in moving it forward. Thanks, guys.
Sean, thank you very much again. You're all very kind. I really appreciate it. My ask to council, okay, I'm not sitting here expecting this big pot of funding to come my way. No, not at all. And most of these are already doing what I'm going to ask. And it's just support, push it out there, talk about it, share it around. So we're trying to almost change a culture and a conversation. And that only comes when people are engaged in it. So that means if we're doing things, if they're public events, to be there, to support it, to almost to push it. This September, for example, we're running 3 events in September for Recovery Month. It's the first time we've ever done it, but we're running the Northwest first in Derry, the first ever recovery conference, followed by, I'm going to say the first, but it's the second first recovery walk on the 24th from Everton Square for Northern Ireland. That's the sort of stuff that starts conversations with people, that starts getting people to say, well, do you know what? I have been struggling with this issue for so long. Jeepers, there's a load of people out there that have done the same. Maybe it's okay for me to talk about it. That's what we need help to do. Okay, people will come to us. They will filter that way. But if we're trying to change the narrative around how we perceive people with addiction, being burdens, being bad people, being morally failed, we have a lot of work to do. And that comes from the entire community doing it. So Sean, look, thank you very much. And yes, look, the conference is the Wednesday the 7th. It's in the Millennium Forum. We thought, you know what, go big or go home. We have a really great lineup of speakers coming there, and that's open to people who are struggling, family members, professionals, academics, students, the general public. It's just an open access celebration of the fact that recovery is really awful and hard, but also recovery is possible and hopeful. Sean, thank you.
Guys. Yep. The next syndicated speaker is Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Gary, again for coming. There's not much more I can say. I am a huge fan of the work that you've been doing. I met you when I first got elected, and the passion that you have and your team has is why you are doing so amazingly. It's not just about the programme, but it's about the people. And apologies, I have a house full of wains in the background, so if you can hear them. But no, Gary, I have proposed that you come to council and you come to the civic forum and speak. And I know your schedule is hectic between you and Sarah and ARC and everything. But I think it's really important that we do get this message out that there is a fantastic programme here. There's somewhere that you can go and you can reach help if you need it. But like you say, unfortunately, it comes with the fact that you now have a waiting list because these are so amazing. You have my party's and my personal full support in anything we do, and I do look forward to the conference and the walk in September. I think these are on the ball when it comes to what more you can do. I don't know how you have enough time in the day, but I just wanted to put it on record again, my full support to you and my thanks to you and the team and everything you do, because the name's getting out there, the people are talking about it, and every time you speak to anybody about it, they speak so positively, because it's an amazing program with an amazing team. And like you say, it's a wraparound service in a community. So well done to you and well done to the guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. I really appreciate it again for your support. And you mentioned it there. It's a lot of people see Arc and they see my face, and it's the face and the beard and the hat. There's a team of people here that this doesn't work if they're not here. They're in the background, they're meeting people, they're connecting with people. And it's about remembering that this is not just one person, this is a team of people with that passion that you talked about, that have either been through it or experienced it in their life, but just want to help people, they pull people out of holes, and it's really good to have that. So Rachel, thanks again for your encouragement. It's appreciated.
Thank you. The next speaker is Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in, and welcome Gaz with his presentation today. And look, on behalf of the DEP, I just want to congratulate you on your own achievements and the achievements of all your team working around you. And I think your presentation today tells us very, very clearly as a committee here, it's a very, very successful organisation. And through success brings more people through the door, and that's probably why you're sitting at the moment with 200 of a waiting list, and it shows how good the organisation is. I do know a couple of people who have went through your scheme, and they really, really said it was an excellent scheme. And you know, Gaz, I think at the end of the day, with addiction, no matter what type of addiction it is, there's always that embarrassment or shame or stigma and around it to come to ask for help. But I know people that have come through your scheme that are out telling the good story that ARC has done and has helped them through their difficulties, through addiction, and getting them back on the road again. And your own story stands for its own testament. And I think that's vitally important that people are educated out there, that there is help out there, the likes of yourself and stuff like that there. And it can work, and it will work if you put the time and effort in with the expertise of yourself and the team behind that. Look, as you know, guys, funding is always an issue. I would like more funding for addiction and addiction recovery, but it's not within our gift, it's for a higher authority, but we will always ask. And as a council, we should always be asking for more to deal with that, because we know it is a problem. But, I think it's an excellent idea, your conference in September. Really raises the profile again. You say you might not be the first, but you're the second. It doesn't matter whether you're first, second, or third, as long as you're doing something that raises the profile, that there is help out there. And look, that is a day for your organisation to profile some of the people who have went through your system, that they can stand up and tell the story of how, yes, may have been a difficult time, but got through it. And look, I just will say yours is a very, very modest ask, is support. And I believe we as a council, and I'm sure everyone on this committee today, will be supporting your cause and around that. And I know our party have no problem in supporting it. But once again, guys, thank you for the work that you do. It's a very detailed work. And look, sometimes probably difficult to carry out, but you have the expertise and the knowledge. But once again, thanks for coming in.
Boris, thank you very much. Again, really encouraging. I mean, it's not, everybody's been so encouraging, and that's what's nice about whenever you're doing what you just love doing. And that's why ARC works, because we love what we do, and we have a heart for helping people get through this challenge, because that's what it is. It's not their identity, it's the challenge that they're facing. So, Boris, thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker is Councillor Boyle.
Thank you, Chair. And on behalf of Sinn Féin, I just want to thank Gary for coming here today too, for his presentation, very detailed, and best wishes on your achievement in terms of recognition for your Nurse of the Year, RCN Nurse of the Year. Well done on that, and we wish you every success going forward on that. I suppose for me, I'm a Strabane councillor, and I have heard a lot about your successful achievements in terms of ARC. And you did mention the accessibility in terms of Strabane and trying to get, clients from Strabane, the Strabane area. You have 200 people on your waiting list, Gary, and I suppose that's testimony to the success of what you have achieved to date. I would be keen just to hear, I suppose, just every family has someone or knows someone within their family circle that has some sort of an addiction. And I suppose what we're seeing now in terms of things socially, in terms of younger people, and a lot of younger people, with addictions. And we talk about early intervention, and I suppose with addiction, it's always a bit too late because the intervention early never comes for someone that has an illness of addiction. But I'd be keen to hear, Gary, maybe if there's something in terms of early intervention that you may possibly be thinking further down the road. And I just see some of the public bodies that you work with in terms of the probation board, the police service, and the Drug and Alcohol Alliance. Youth justice tend to work with the younger people that have, some sort of dysfunctionality or problems at home, and I always believe early intervention is key. So is that something that you would be mindful of doing in terms of going forward, and building on what you have achieved to date, would be to work with maybe the youth justice? I know you probably have a certain age criteria for people coming to you for the help that they need. But there's a lot of work ongoing, I believe, that could be done and achieved with schools and with the youth justice and families of younger people. So all I want to say just is well done on what you've achieved so far. And yes, we would like a Gary Rutherford in Strabane if we could. But that, I do believe, is something that you're going to be working on and will achieve in the not so distant future. We have many people, particularly people in the rural areas, who can't access the services that they need in terms of for their recovery. And families want to help their loved ones achieve that recovery, but it's not always there at the point of delivery or access to it. So I think there's a bit of work there to be done, not just by your own organisation, but by the organisations within the trusts and other bodies. So thank you for allowing us the opportunity to hear from yourself. And I wish you every success on behalf of our party for the future. Thank you.
Michaela, thank you very much again for the kind words of the encouragement. I actually used to run the satellite service for the addiction service at a railway road, so Strabane has a wee part of my heart. In terms of working with younger people, we actually work, so we're a predominantly adult service, but we work on a one-to-one basis with young people when they come to us. We have been in schools here for the last year and a half, delivering intervention workshops, delivering choice workshops. The thing about intervention, I remember school people coming in and telling me what I should and shouldn't do. We need to be going into schools at a point in time when we can get our young people to be making good choices that are resilient, that have good self-esteem, self-worth, and self-confidence. Because if we can make sure that our young people are strong and resilient, then we reduce the risk of them becoming reliant on substances in the future. The landscape of drug use has changed. I ran a 6-week program, a young adult version of our adult program for a local secondary school in the town, where they shipped 7 individuals over to us for an hour a day for 6 weeks because they were actively using substances. So for us, our heart is to impact people, whether they're 14, 15 or 59. It's irrelevant. It's a resource and it's a capacity issue. If we had unlimited resources and unlimited capacity, we could do so many things. But it's on our radar, and it is something that we do think about and will be pushing forward. So thanks for your comments, Michael. I really do appreciate it. And thanks for the encouragement.
Thank you, guys. I think that's the end of our indicated speakers, guys. So for myself, I do thank you for your presentation. I did find it very detailed and informative, and I have a friend in the city here that has used your service as well, and speaks very, very highly of yourself and the services. And in my view, the issues you're tackling aren't easy to tackle, but you are definitely, you and your organisation are doing a great job, and as others have said, it's testament to the waiting list you have for your service. And I do agree with Councillor Boyle there as well around the wider sort of Strabane area. And I'd just like to say anything that I could do, guys, to help that, to spread awareness, or even a meeting or anything at all. I would like to offer that help in addition to what you're doing in the city. So anything that you think we could support with over the next few months and years, please get in touch. And just on a final note, I do wish you well, you and your team well, and I wish you every success in the future, guys. And massive thank you for coming in. Really, really informative and eye-opening, really. So I do thank you for coming in.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity, Council, and have a good day.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on, guys, to all our business. You're more welcome to stay on, but you might have more pressing things to do.
I have a 5-year-old that needs sorting out, so guys, enjoy the rest of your day, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, members, I'm going to move on to item 6, which is chairperson's business, and I have one issue I would like to raise today, and that's the issue of the Foyle Cup. Members will agree that the Foyle Cup is a huge sporting event for our area. It has grown massively since 1992 to what it is today, and I do believe it brings a massive boost to our local area, not only in terms of sport, but also in terms of for local economy and for our tourism offering. So I do want to offer my thanks to everyone involved in organising this year's events. There's 455 teams this year, 8,500 participants and countless visitors to the Northwest. In particular, I want to give my thanks to Michael Hutton, the Derry and District UFFA, our council officers and our teams here, and all the young people and referees participating in this year's event. And I think it's also important to recognise the many, many volunteers across the city and district that are making the Foyle Cup happen. Personally, I've received very, very good feedback this year, especially around CMOs and the glebe from many, many parents who were heaping praise on the organisers of the event. It was good to see matches in the glebe and saying for me personally, and I just wanted to put in record my thanks and the thanks of this committee to all the organisers of the event. Okay, members, I'm going to move on to councillors who have contacted me for chair's business. And the first one is Councillor Doyle, and I believe he has 2 issues he wants to raise.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for your indulgence and allowing me to bring these forward. The first one's a bit of a strange one. I don't like bringing these things in the committee, but I'm at my wit's end, and I think I'm not the only one. I've had a bit of an issue this last number of months with Radius Housing Association in trying to represent constituents who have come forward to myself and other reps around housing issues under their control. So to give you an idea, obviously if we contact the housing executive, any of us, they largely know that they can speak to us on about constituents' cases. But what I found recently, and it's very inconsistent as well, is that with Radius, whenever I contact a member of their staff, they actually ask me to go back and have the constituent ring them to give them permission to speak to us, which can, in many cases, is sometimes of a week, 10 days of a delay. Now look, they've quoted to me the GDPR regulations 1,000 times, but it's obvious that there's something not right whenever we can speak to any other housing association or housing body in the city and district. So I'm asking, well, very basically, can we write to them, remind them that This happens on a regular basis. That's what we're here for in many cases for constituents, and maybe send all of our details so that when we do ring up, we don't have to jump through hoops just to get to the first stage of trying to help constituents out. So if we could do that, I'd really appreciate it. The second one, Chair, if you don't mind, is I suppose off the back of what you said about the Foyle Cup. Obviously, fantastic event, but I want to highlight a specific issue with regards to Cumore Youth FC. Now we know that there's a bit of an issue down there at the moment with land that they currently use to play fields down at Cumore Point that are being sold off. I spoke to Barry, who's very helpfully gave me an update about that previous. I've spoken to a lot of residents down around the area who really feel that we have to be pulling out all the stops to make sure that even though the land is zoned particularly for recreation and sports, that this council seems to be doing absolutely everything that we can do to support that, the team, the parents and all the stakeholders for what is a very important feature in the lives of many young people in Cumore. So I'm wondering if I could put a very short proposal into the chat box, Chair, if you would allow that, and we can maybe discuss it. I'll just put it in the chat box here. Thank you.
So look, just firstly, your first proposal around radius, it might be beneficial to put that in as well, just to so members have clarity on what we're writing for. Is that okay? Councillor Tierney?
They're saying that we are getting two proposals in the one go on two very separate issues. Can we take maybe a couple of minutes to we read them? I've understand what Councillor Doyle is saying around the radius issue to begin with, but I am slightly concerned that this council may be getting in the way of the procedures of another organisation. Now, there is a very simple solution to it, and we do it all the time. I'm in regular contact with Radius, but as anybody will know, they have a consent form that you get the constituent to sign whenever they first approach you. Email the consent form, and there's no issue thereafter. It's a very straightforward process. It's the exact same process whenever you're looking to speak to anybody from the Western Trust, for example. But I'm slightly concerned that, it's not that, Councillor Doyle says this can hold it up for 10 days or more. I don't see how. I struggle to understand how. But, however, I am slightly concerned that this council may be trying to override the practices and procedures within another organisation, just because, with the greatest respect, Councillor Doyle hasn't sent a consent form to the organisation. That's not our, we're a local authority, a local council. It's not our job to tell other organisations how they should deal with people from this organisation. There's a very simple procedure that you can cut out the issue. It should have happened maybe once or twice, and then after that you realise, right, I need to take action here and do something to prevent this 10-day hold-up. So if we can, without going into the Cumore stuff right now, because of a fair wee bit that I could say about that as well, I would prefer that we take a wee 5 minutes to understand what the two proposals are, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Yep, Councillor Doyle, you want back in?
Chair, I absolutely totally understand where Brian's coming from. What I would say is that for, not to put too much of a fine point on it, but for smaller parties or independents, for example, who maybe don't have the capacity to be dealing with consent forms and getting people to come onto premises that they maybe don't have to sign consent forms and return them, it just seems very odd to me that this one organisation has even got that process when it's obvious that it's not required, because if it was, the housing executive, Apex and all of the others would be doing it. So I take his point, but I do think that there is a bit of an inconsistency here. And in fairness, it's taken me longer than 10 days in some instances, but I do take his point, but there's just an inconsistency I think we need to address.
Okay, Councillor, if you can get your proposal into the chat box. Councillor Donnelly?
Yeah, Chair, just to concur with Councillor Doyle there is, you know, you have the housing executive in Apex where this isn't required, but I find some of the smaller organisations are absolutely terrible. There is a duty of council regarding housing and that. Regards Clan Mill, I've been phoning them at least a dozen times in the last 3 weeks, and I can't even get them to return a call, let alone get whether I have to fill in a consent form or not. So I do think that anything, you know, that this council can do to get these people they be accountable to elected reps on behalf of their tenants would help. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Donnelly. Can we get the proposal, which is the first one from Councillor Doyle on the screen? The one currently on it is the second proposal, apologies. It's from the first chair's business issue that he raised. If we can get that up on the screen. Yep. Okay, Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in. And this is on the radius thing. I do agree with Councillor Tierney and around. Look, we as public representatives and organisations, even myself, organisations that I speak to, you know, carrying out work for electors or constituents, as I like to call them, many of them do ask for the consent form or the consent from the person that I'm speaking about. And I look, and I do take on board the concerns that maybe there is some organisations out there that are slow in coming back, which creates the difficulty. But look, 9 times out of 10, Chair, if you say you're an alderman or a councillor, look, generally you're taken on board. But the consent form, I don't believe we as a council can be getting involved in that type of stuff because that's down to procedures within every organisation. And there is confidentiality, GDPR, has been spoken here. So I would be hesitant to support it, but I can understand the concerns where Councillor Doyle is coming from if someone is taking 10 days or longer to come back to him. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Alderman Devaney. Members, I'm going to give a few minutes here just to consider this proposal before bringing it to a possible vote. Members. Okay, members, thank you very much. On the first proposal by Councillor Doyle, there seems to be a bit of disagreement on it, so I'm going to go directly to a vote on it, members. Karen, if you're able to take the vote. Oh, sorry, Barry's going to take the vote on the first one.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Members, so Alderman Morris Devaney.
Against?
Calling the vote, it was pretty quick. In terms of the current wording of Councillor Doyle's proposal is saying that we write to Radius to remind them around GDPR processes. And I think they're going to come back and say, yeah, we're following our GDPR processes, which is we will not disclose personal details of any tenants we have without their prior consent. So they're going to adhere to their GDPR processes. So I think that's contradictory around the motion. But we have no issue sending the details of every elected rep that sits in this council to Radius. That's fine. We don't have an issue with it. But just
we'll go. Members, I'm going to go with a vote. It's been discussed enough, and Barry started to vote. So Barry, do you want to continue on?
Thanks, Chair. I'll go back to the start again. Alderman Morris Devaney.
Against, and I just want to be very, very clear, it's in around the GDPR, nothing with the rest of it, or writing a letter of complaint about the timeline, but just because of the GDPR.
Alderman Darren Guy.
I'll abstain because I'm not sure what the vote's about. So,
Alderman Keith Kerrigan. Alderman Keith Kerrigan. Councillor Michaela Boyle.
Against, Chair.
Councillor Emmett Doyle.
Or.
Councillor Stephen Edwards.
Against.
Councillor Rory Farrell.
Or.
Councillor Rachel Ferguson.
Or.
Councillor Paul Fleming.
Against, Barry.
Councillor Sean Harkin.
For.
Councillor Christopher Jackson.
against, Barry.
Councillor Emma McGinley.
Against, Barry.
Councillor Lillian Sonoy Barr.
Oh, Barry.
Councillor Brian Tierney.
Reluctantly for.
Six each.
6 each.
Yeah,
6 each. Yeah.
Second.
Yeah, I vote. There's 6 for, 6 against, and 1 abstaining.
Members, it's a tie vote, 6 for, 6 against, and the chair's got the deciding vote, so my decision is against. So members, that motion falls. The second motion, members, fourth here, members, and looking at this, I do think that members do need more time to consider this. I'm not going to allow this second motion. I'm going to take some officers' advice as well and bring in Barry here to give some more information on the second proposal.
Thanks, Chair. Just for an update, members, obviously the land as it is with the present landowner, we have a lease on that particular site, and Conmore AFC are the tenant club. They play most of the games there, and that, so obviously the land is now up for sale, but we're still in that lease. We've also, whoever buys the land then is bound also by that. Now there is a legal way through our legal team that they can get out of it, but they must serve notice on it and pay back any monies and that. But Councillor Doyle has highlighted, yeah, the land is zoned for recreation and leisure. So whoever, any new landowner, it's going to be difficult to do anything other than use the land for recreational value. The wording on it
if I can say it, to ensure the retention of accessible sports facilities at Culmore. As an officer team, we would hope that the new landowner would enter into a new lease agreement. They may be looking more money from us than we pay the current landowner. But in terms of us as a council ensuring the retention of it, that's not something we could guarantee at the minute. But look, we are in negotiations, and our legal team are in negotiations, and that is the hope that through the community, through the football club, council officers and elected reps, that we, when the land is, if it is sold, we will come to some sort of agreement and keep the football club. If there are any changes to that and they come up with a plan that they want to do something different with the land, we'd bring it into this committee and come up with a number of suggestions what we think we can do. But we hope we don't get to that stage, but we're probably a couple of months off that stage at the minute.
Thank you, Barry. Councillor Doyle, would you be happy if an update report came into September's committee, providing an update on that? Okay, members. The next...
Chair, can I come on there just?
Yep, go ahead.
Are we sure that there's September is going to be enough time for an update? Because I don't think it's going to be. I don't think that my understanding is that these negotiations will not be finished by September. So to be committing to bringing one in September would be counterproductive, I think. It's my understanding that once this land is sold and it's all done and dusted, the update has to come under this committee anyway, because we would be entering into a new lease with a new landowner. So whilst I'm fully supportive of Culmore FC and trying to make sure that they have ground, let's not be creating hysteria around this. Officers are dealing with it, as are community representatives in Culmore, and let's let the process run its course. And at that stage, an update has to come in to this committee, is my understanding. And when that is ready and available, then we should consider it then. But September, in my view, is far, far too soon.
Point taken, Councillor Tierney, and officers have agreed when there is an update that they'll bring a report into Health and Communities Committee. Members, the next person who is an issue with me under Chair's business is Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak to this issue today. And so, look, you know, again, we're in a cost of living crisis, and it is challenging for a lot of people right across our district in terms of being able to afford all sorts of things. I've been contacted by some family members who have loved ones in residential care and nursing homes, and we've been speaking about the third-party top-up fees, and I think that this has been a concern of mine in the past in terms of like so many people who have loved ones or relatives in care. It's become automatic that they pay top-up fees, and I'm sure you've heard yourselves about people talking about how expensive it is and how expensive it can be. And I think in this cost of living environment that we're in, it's becoming even more challenging for people. So I know of one family that are haven't paid their third-party top-up fees and are now facing court action. And for them, there's a whole series of issues connected to this in terms of their unwillingness to pay. And I completely back them in this. I think they've every right not to feel they should be paying this bill. But I've also read now an FOI, Freedom of Information request that has come in response to from the Western Trust in regard to the use of third-party top-up fees by residential homes and by nursing homes, and it's actually quite alarming. I was taken aback by the breadth in terms of the number of people or number of residents for whom there are top-up fees now required, and it seemed to me within that report, based on the questions that were asked, that there is no real guidance given or advice given to families who are placing or are having a loved one go into a residential home or a nursing care facility about whether or not they have to pay a top-up fee. It also said in this FOI that there's no difference in the standard of care between a Western Trust facility and a privately run facility, which I think was a bit, I found, alarming as well, because I'm not sure that people are being put into or paying top-up fees simply because of the aesthetics in a particular building. So there seems to be a big issue here about whether or not people should be paying these top-up fees, or and the reality is a lot of people feel like it's automatic and there's not really a choice, and that burden, I think, is piling up for a lot of families right now who can't afford this. So I think that this is something that needs to be looked at. I'm quite concerned about it, and I think if others have access to the freedom of information or see that reported in the press, they'll have similar concerns. So what I want to propose is that we get a report ourselves as the council from the Western Trust regarding our concerns about the use of third-party top-up fees, and we get them in here to do a presentation so we can ask directly some of the questions that I know others have been asking, because I think we have to do everything we can to help people who are struggling right now. And if people are unnecessarily paying top-up fees for their loved ones to be cared for, I think we have to put a spotlight on that. So I'm going to put the proposal I have, which is very straightforward. It's not too complicated, into the chat group there for people to look at, and hopefully people will be willing to support this. I think it is a very serious issue that maybe there's not enough clarity or information on why so many people are paying top-up fees in nursing homes and residential homes, and if it's actually necessary. Because look, I don't think that we should be just funneling money to care home bosses so that they can make big profits. Something needs to be done about this if that's the case. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin. I just want to put on record that Councillor Doyle has declared an interest in this item and has left the Guildhall chamber here. But I'm going to give members a few minutes just to consider this motion. Okay, members, any members want to speak on this proposal? Yep, Councillor Fire.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Harkin, for the proposal. We're content with the proposal, happy to second. In fact, it is no secret about the spiralling cost of care home fees and just how expensive they are. I have personal experience of this, where family members are paying maybe £800 a week, and the current funding arrangements mean that anyone that has capital of over £23,000, which could be a house, is expected to use that to fund exorbitant care home fees. And these are people that have paid taxes all their lives, and then they're paying through the nose at the end of their life. And on the issue of the care home or the top-up fees, I'm not an expert, but I know that there's legislation in place from 1972 which says the person staying in the home cannot pay the top-up fee themselves. It has to be a friend or a family member, which is an absurd situation. So somebody that does have capital to pay the top-up fee can't pay it themselves. It has to be somebody else. So I think that's a ridiculous situation. And the reason for the top-up fees is that the fee charged by the care home, if that is more than what the trust is prepared to pay for the care, that's what the top-up fee is. So I don't know if it's the care homes are charging too much. If the Western Trust or whatever trust it is has set the bar too low, that results in the top-up fee. So there's a lot of issues here that we need to discuss. So we fully support inviting the Western Trust and they have a discussion about this. It's a very, very wide-ranging issue, but it's a pressing issue for the entire society. So happy to support the proposal on behalf of the SLP. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Farrell. Councillor Boyle.
Yes, Chair, thank you. We'd be happy to support the proposal before us. This is not a new issue. This is an issue that has been around for a very long time. I would be aware of families, indeed I know of a family who are struggling. In terms of top-up fees, it doesn't matter your income either. It's difficult in terms of the care home that you're in, and I know it depends, if you're closer to home, if it's a care home closer to your home or further away, it depends as well in terms of the charges. But we'd be happy to support. And I do know in terms of a person-centred care, it depends on your complex needs as well too. So there are issues around the top-up fees in terms of your medical care and attention that is given to the individual. So that's a concern as well. It's not a level playing field across the board. But we'd be happy to support the proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Boyle. Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in. On behalf of the DEP, we have no problem in supporting this proposal going forward to invite the Western Trust area in to discuss this wide-ranging area. And I do agree with previous speakers. Some loved ones are being charged £800 a week for care in these homes. And look, I do welcome the input from Councillor Farrell and around the top-ups. I do agree with him. The top-ups come above what the trust would pay if the fee is higher, and I do agree with them. The trust probably isn't paying enough. So I do believe it's good business to bring them in and let's scrutinise them and see where the issue is coming from. And I do take on board Councillor Boyle's comments as well. This is an issue that's been ongoing for some time, and look, different people with different complex needs is higher cost care, and we understand it. But Chair, happy to support the proposal.
Thank you, Alderman Devaney. Councillor Farr, or Councillor Tierney, apologies.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to Councillor Harkin for his proposal. And Councillor Farrell has already spoken of our support for the proposal. I want to make a slight amendment, and I'm going to, Chair, I hope you'll allow me to maybe hear from Councillor Harkin's opinion before we actually formally propose the amendment, because it's not. I don't want to take away from the sentiment behind his reasoning for bringing this important proposal before us. But I also don't want the Western Trust to come here as the policy deliverer and not the policy maker, and for want of a better word, get off the hook by coming and holding their hands up and saying we're delivering a policy on behalf of the Department for Health. We don't set the policy. It's our job to implement it. So with that in mind, at this, my eyesight's not the best, but I think it's the second, where it's the second Western Trust. I wonder what Councillor Harkin would consider / Department for Health, so that we're inviting them both in, so that we actually have the people who are making the policy who are here to answer the questions, rather than someone just coming and saying, well, it's not our policy. We're just told that this is what we have to do. If we want to get to the bottom of this issue and we want to do something about it, it would be my view that we might be better speaking to the policy makers in that vein. But just before I formally move that amendment, if Councillor Harkin wants to, because I genuinely don't want to take away from the sentiment around it either. I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just trying to make sure that we're hearing from the right people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Councillor Harkin.
Chair, I think Councillor Harkin has indicated in the chat box.
Hi there. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, sorry, I muted myself, unmuted and then muted myself. Yeah, I think that strengthens it. I think that we should have the Department for Health in here, and I think, look, partly it's about getting the information right, because it's taken a freedom of information request to get the details of this, and now there needs to be follow up, and I think that it's the Western Trust that can provide the details in terms of. And then the department obviously are responsible for it. There's a whole range of things here where there isn't the costs are increasingly out of control for people, and there doesn't, on paper, there's not supposed to be a difference in the standard of care between a Western Trust facility and a private facility. But I think a lot of people maybe think that they're paying for better care, but that shouldn't be the case. And I think that there's questions to answer if that is true. And there is no policy in terms of getting a refund. There is no mechanism to do it if you're unhappy with the level of care that you're getting, or if you feel you want to withdraw out of the situation that you're in. So there is, as someone said, there's a wide ranging set of issues here. But I think that there's at root here, many people are struggling to pay these bills and are increasingly struggling to pay them because of the cost of living crisis that we're in. And there can't be a situation where private care homes are making a fortune and there is no justification for it, and that there is no accountability around this. So it looks like people are going to support this, and I welcome that. And I think that the families that are struggling with these payments are going to welcome that too. Thanks, Chair. So welcome the amendment. Thanks, Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you for allowing me in, Chair, another member of committee. But I can, on a personal level, can say yes, this is a worthwhile notice of motion, and indeed the amendment is very welcome as well. I'm aware that during the COVID-19 scenario, the Minister had expressed concerns as to many issues within private care homes and had intended that these would be addressed. So I think it's very appropriate that the Department of Health should be along to hear the concerns that do exist in our council area, but not just our council area, across Northern Ireland, and indeed, as Councillor Boyle has said, have been there for a long time. I think from the Minister's perspective, I would be under the impression that pushing at an open door, but of course the current situation at Stormont would prevent the Minister from being able to take ministerial action, but the issue has to be highlighted for any future administration. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey. There's no further members.
Can I formally second Councillor Tierney's proposal or amendment? Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Farr. Members, I'm not hearing anyone go against this proposal. If you are, please let me know. Okay, members, we'll take it as unanimous. Members, the next item of Chair's business is Christopher Jackson.
Thanks, Chair, for bringing me in, and hopefully this is relatively straightforward. I just want to, on behalf of Sinn Féin, nominate Councillor Emma McGinley as our party's nomination for the UNICEF political champion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. That's been noted. Members, going to move on to item 7, which is matters arising from the open minutes of the Health and Community Committee held on Thursday, the 16th of June, and that's pages 15 to 66. If members have any matters arising they wish to raise, please let me know. Okay, no members have indicated, so we're going to move on to item 8, which is Animal Welfare Service, and Seamus is going to take this paper.
Thanks, Chair. At a previous meeting of this committee, council officers were asked to consider making available additional staff resource for the Animal Welfare Service within this council area. Members, the report outlines the current service delivery model, which was reviewed in September 21, and the level of funding provided by the Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs. There are currently 10 animal welfare officers employed across the 5 regions, 2 of which work within the Western region. Managers from the 3 councils within the Western region have met to consider the allocation of additional resource to this area, and 2 options have been put forward for members to consider in the report. The first is to utilise existing staff resource and associated budget, and the second is to recruit an additional animal welfare officer. Members, it's recommended that this committee approve option 1, which would see an increase in resource allocation from 0.8 to 1 full-time equivalent animal welfare officer for this council area.
Thank you, Seamus. And the first indicated speaker is Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Seamus, for the report. It was a very detailed report, and it's something that I had raised and concerns of the level of service that we got in this sub-regional structure. Now, Seamus, I really do appreciate it. I understand that things are tough at the moment for us with the rates process and everything that's going on. I won't be proposing the estimated cost of £82,000, but I'm not Alfie Dallas. But when I've looked over the £1.2 million, and if you split that between the 5 areas, and then even with us at 30%, 32% here with our welfare cases, if you actually break that down from the numbers, it's around about £75,000. So we're, that the funding that has been going to this structure, which should be dedicated to our area, I do think that warranted at least 1 full-time worker here within this area, given the cases that we're getting and the numbers that we're getting. I understand that this is set up between DERA and the sub-regional structure. I'm wondering whether or not we have a voice on that forum to highlight the issues that we're having, to highlight, at the moment we're saying that 80% of animal welfare's officers' workload is spent here within the cases, but like I said, with some of the stuff that we were getting back, we were being told that the animal welfare officer was only spending 1 day a week within the actual area to check on cases. I understand it's a complicated system, so where I disappointed we wouldn't be able to have one directly here without an extreme cost to us and our rates payers. I do think that there is work to be done in that structure to try and push for more of level of service when it comes to the £1.2 million being spent over the 11 council areas. I'm happy to propose the option 1 because I hope that it will see an increase of animal welfare officers actually, being contactable within the council area, or at least the feedback we get from some of the people that I've been aware of. I think maybe there's a bit of work with us in council and trying to highlight the use of the service more, because I say that the case that this came to head was whenever I'd heard about a dog in the Strand Road being hit quite clearly, and the response was from the person that they wouldn't call the animal welfare officer because they couldn't get a hold of them. So it wasn't being reported. So I really appreciate the work that you've done on this. And I know it's not been an easy task. And I appreciate the work that the animal welfare officers have been doing. I just think that it's a huge, big area for them to cover between the 3 council areas within such small numbers. So I'm happy to go ahead with the proposed uplift to 1 full-time worker within our council area, but I do think that we need to keep an eye on it, see if it gets any better, and if not, we do need to have a strong voice advocating for us on that forum, just to make sure that we actually get the resources that we need, because if you compare us to other councils across the board, whether it be in the south or over the UK, their animal welfare officers, you're talking 4 per council to try and make awareness for animal welfare issues. And Chair, after everybody else has spoken on the paper, could I bring an animal welfare issue in after? But appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. The next speaker is Councillor Boyle.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the presentation, Seamus. Just like the previous speaker, you know, I welcome the report, and obviously option 1, using the existing animal welfare officer resource, obviously is the preferred choice as currently. It's a big job undertaken by one person right across the district, but apologies in advance of asking this, but has that animal welfare officer, previous one, or he or she been in to do a presentation for? I know I personally would like to hear exactly what the work involves and what it entails, and how we can assist an animal welfare officer as elected representatives in our constituencies. So, I mean, if people agree at some stage, maybe over the course of the next between now and autumn or winter, whatever, to have that person in, maybe to hear from them. I think it would be a good idea for, as the previous speaker said, animal welfare cases are getting more and more, and since COVID, and a lot of people, I mean, let's face it, can't, you know, we've heard the extreme stories about people not being able to afford meal for their animals, and animals having to die as a result of it, and carcasses lying, and water's polluted because of, you know, different types of animals being left just to die and starve. So I certainly would like to hear more from an animal welfare officer in regards to the work that they do and how we could assist them as elected representatives supporting our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boyle. I think that's something we can get on the list, Seamus, to bring the animal welfare officer in to give us a presentation. But that's a great point to make, Councillor Boyle. The next speaker is Alderman Hussey.
Thank you for permission to come in, Chair, and I totally endorse the previous 2 councillors and their remarks. The concern that I see is the word equivalent. At least what we should have hoped for was a full-time animal welfare officer, somebody within the group service, yes, but at least somebody who would be based in our area, because as Councillor Ferguson has outlined there, a big issue is accessibility and speed of response. So it talks about full-time equivalent. So that means that it won't be the same officer, you know, gaining local knowledge and being able to develop contacts in the area, useful contacts. So the word equivalent is concerning. And as to where, I'm not sure, is the service based in Oma or in Enniskillen? You know, so that has another impact. You know, the person with the van travelling, you know, if they're on a case in Enniskillen and then having to come to a case in our end, it is concerning that we couldn't, that the Animal Welfare Service could not provide an officer based in our council area. Thank you.
Seamus will bring you in, yeah.
Thanks, Chair. And just to reply to Alderman Hussey's concerns, I suppose that the key point is there's a service level agreement in place which outlines the response times, and they will be kept under review by the management team. The officers are currently based in Omagh, and it's important to also say that the dog wardens will assist where possible, and we'll keep the service level agreement under review.
Thank you, Seamus. Next speaker is Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in, and I'm not going to go over reiterate everything. I do take on board the concerns Alderman Hussey has raised, that it would be preferential if we had somebody within the council area. But happy to support option 1, Chair, on this issue. Thanks.
Thank you, Alderman Devaney. I think we have Councillor Ferguson proposing option 1. I don't think we have a seconder. Anyone want a second?
I'll second it, Alderman Devaney.
Alderman Devaney, second. Okay. And no one's going against, so I take that as unanimous. And before we move on, Councillor Ferguson, did you say you wanted to come back in and raise an animal welfare issue?
Absolutely, Chair. I was just on the same animal welfare issue within Fermanagh and Omagh Council. I'm not sure if you've seen, but there is a planning application for a proposed dog breeding and kennel facility, which is to house up to around about 600 dogs to breed, 250,000 puppies at any time. I would hope that with our previous support and puppy farming that we could send a letter from this committee to highlight our objection to it, because we know ourselves the impact that we're having since COVID with the amount of puppy farms popping up everywhere. But I don't see the need in a facility where you can house 600 dogs at one time just to breed puppies and make a profit off it. So I'm just going to put a proposal in the chat box, Chair, and it's just that we write to Fermanagh and Omagh District Council to express our concern and objection to the proposed plan application for the dog breeding kennel facility, if you don't mind, Chair.
If you get it in the chat box, we'll get it up on screen, Councillor Ferguson. And like you, I'm aware of this. I've been sent a number of emails, I suppose, over the last week and a half about this issue, so I know that it is important. But if I can get it up on screen, I'll give members time to consider it.
I'll second that, Chair.
Okay, members, this is proposed by Councillor Ferguson, second by Councillor Doyle. Does any member want to address the proposal in front of us? Members, I'm not hearing anyone. Councillor Boyle, yep.
Right, Chair. Pardon the pun, for the love of animals. I don't know, I know I've seen some emails about this. I don't know exactly too much detail about it. It hasn't gone through planning. It's just a proposal at this stage. Am I right? That's just what I want to know. It has.
I believe it's through Council Officer that it's an application at the moment. Yeah.
So if we write, we're formally objecting at this moment in time? Yeah. I take it we are, or that's the proposal?
Yep, I believe that's the proposal. And again, in considering this proposal, I brought a motion in the past in my committee, and I noted, and there again, that our corporate position is against puppy farms, and this issue has been widely, it's been in the media as well, and it's been, I suppose, over the last week and a half, Councillor Boyle.
No, thank you for that clarity. No, I just wasn't sure in terms of us objecting now. I thought it was something that had come through planning already, you see. So thank you.
Councillor Tierney.
Thanks, Chair. So just so I'm right, what we're being asked to do is to object to a planning application for Mananoma District Council. Is that right?
I believe that's correct, Councillor Tierney.
Okay.
Okay, members, I haven't heard anyone against this. I'm going to allow this proposal, and as again, it will be ratified next week if members have any issue with it. I'm going to allow it. I hear no objections. If anyone's against, please let me know. Alderman Hussey.
It's just a procedural issue. Those on the planning committee will know that objections have to be on planning grounds. I don't know if Councillor Boyle is in the meeting, but as chair of planning, would have any advice on that? The objection needs to be stated and needs to be properly stated as a within planning criteria. I certainly, understand where Councillor Ferguson's coming from, but given the autonomy that planning committees have, the wording of the objection would need to be in planning terms to be acceptable within the planning system as such. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, Alderman Hussey point made, and we'll leave that to officers. As I said, we'll have full council next week, which will be ratifying this proposal anyway. Again, Alderman Hussey, I haven't heard you go against the proposal, so I'm happy to take this proposal as unanimous, members.
I'm not on the committee, Chair.
Oh, yeah, apologies, Alderman Hussey. Yep, so this proposal passes. Members, I'm going to go to item 9, which is a review of the Affordable Warmth Working Group, which is pages 73 to 78, and Seamus is taking this item.
Thanks, Chair. The purpose of the report is to update members on the proposal to wind up the Affordable Warmth Working Group. Councils have been delivering the service since 2014, and a task and finish working group was set up in 2019 to consider how the scheme was being delivered locally in line with the service level agreement with DFC. The working group held a number of meetings over a 12-month period, and regular updates have been brought to this committee. The report also outlines recent correspondence with DFC relating to the level of funding and referral rates for this financial year, and the recommendation is that officers feel that the working group is not currently required. However, officers will continue to provide regular updates to this committee.
Okay, first indicated speaker is Councillor Farr.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Seamus, for the report. On behalf of the SDLP, we support the proposal. We accept that any issues regarding the affordable warmth scheme can be adequately discussed at this committee, and there's no need for a separate working group. So we have no issue with that. But we do have an issue with the budget cut to the affordable warmth scheme. We do have an issue with the number of referrals that we can make. Last year it was 360. This year it's 260, so that's 100 less. And we have communicated these concerns with the department, and if you've read your pack, you'll see the response from DFC, where it's in the absence of an executive, it is not possible to set a budget for this year, and budget constraints within DFC just mean it's not possible to increase the number of referrals. And it's this same issue over and over again. We have no government in Stormont, and the lack of government at Stormont has far-reaching consequences. Only last week, we were informed that last year there was £120 million that couldn't be spent because we have no government. £10 million has been sent back to the Treasury. That's money. It should be invested in services here, and we're sending it back to London. And included in that underspend was the affordable warrant scheme. It didn't spend all the budget it had for last year. And that's not even mentioning the 435 million that's lying dormant in Stormont. And, that money should be in people's pockets to address the cost of living crisis. And I think everybody's going to be aware that the Assembly is going to be recalled on Tuesday. And I hope and I pray that the DUP approach that with a very, very different attitude, and they actually go there, they nominate a speaker, they nominate a deputy first minister, because the current situation is absolutely farcical. So happy to propose the item on behalf of the SDLP. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Farr. The next syndicated speaker is Councillor Doyle.
Thanks, Chair, and I'll second the recommendation. I do have to say that I agree with Councillor Farrell, because in reading the written statement from the Finance Minister last week, it's very clear that £8.8 million of resource, Dale, has been effectively wiped off balance books up the road, including renovation grants and the affordable warmth scheme. And I have to say, I found the letter that's on page 79 from DFC to be completely in the opposite of what the Minister for Finance said. They are saying very clearly they don't have the money to set a new budget, and the Minister for Finance is saying that 8.8 million, affordable warmth scheme being part of that, is effectively being surrendered back into the central pot. So which is it? And I'm not very happy at all that that there are two very different stories coming out of the executive about this, because we're coming into a winter which is going to be quite difficult for many people with the cost of living crisis and uncertain energy prices in the mix, as well as food prices. What we should be demanding of central government at this time is to be telling people that as much support as possible is there, not what I find to be creative accounting, either in Department for Communities or the Department of Finance, because either the money is there and the scheme should be rolling out and taking on more referrals rather than cutting them, or the money is not there and someone is not telling the Department for Communities. So I do have real concern about the information that we're being given. Because I know for in one case in particular that I've been dealing with recently about that particular scheme, I think it was around April time, I spoke to one of the officials who runs the scheme, and who basically said, we can't take on any more applications because we don't actually know what our budget's going to be. Now we're being told that there was money that was sitting there that should have been spent and wasn't. So which is it? I think it's very bad messaging, especially when we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis. But just wanted to put that on record and second the proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Doyle. The next speaker is Councillor Harkin.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, look, the main issue here is that there's a reduction in the number of referrals that we get to make from our district area. And I think that we can agree that the councillors that were involved in the working group and our council officers did a tremendous amount of work trying to maximise our usage of this scheme for all the right reasons. So it is extremely disappointing that we are, after doing all that positive work, to take advantage of this, that now the numbers are there's a referral reduction for us, and I think that that's disappointing because all the reasons for using this scheme as much as possible have actually increased over the last year. Saving money, allowing people to save money in a cost of living crisis emergency, climate change, everything else. So we should be actually doubling the number of referrals, and instead what we get is a reduction. So it's very, very frustrating. It's angering. There is a lack of clarity as to why this happened. I don't necessarily think that it needed to happen. If our approach to the scheme here in the district and this council was shared in the department, maybe we wouldn't have had the cut despite the executive being down. So I think it's very, very disappointing. Look, there is broader things at play. There will be a call for Stormont to come back on Tuesday. I think the DUP shouldn't hold us all to ransom and keep that money that's in a bank account locked in there, the £435 million. That should be getting spent on social need. But look, the DUP voted to prop up the Tories on Monday night, and they're going to continue their attack on workers. They've just done that with this disgraceful pay cut that they're trying to impose on public sector workers. And the Tories are going to keep attacking public services. They're going to keep attacking public housing. And the DUP obviously voting to keep them in government on Monday night are giving them a green light to keep doing that. But look, we have to keep making noise about the affordable warrant scheme and try to get a return for us to be able to utilise it more as much as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin. Councillor Boyle.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose, and just like previous speakers, in terms of the budget, I suppose they can't set the budget because the DUP will not re-enter into an executive. Consequently to that, there's an inability to set the budget. I think obviously I've said this in this forum and others, the affordable warrant home scheme has always been a victim of its own success. And just in terms of a test case, an issue I'm dealing with at the minute on behalf of a constituent, I suppose in my own council area in Strabane, we're probably one of the last areas to get gas. The cost of gas and electricity and oil, as we know, has risen and will continue to rise over the winter months. And I'm dealing with a family who is looking to be referred, has been referred, but unfortunately for them, it's a dire situation. The parents are elderly and they have mobile issues. They're not good health and they have a disabled son, and they are looking to change the way they heat their home. They're looking for gas and there's issues there, obviously because of the referrals and that. So they were looking for a new boiler replacement. It's just, we're going to hear a lot of these stories and issues that will be coming at us in the winter months ahead. But I do believe that the DUP's refusal to enter an executive has that impact on our communities and the people within them. And this is one, the Affordable Warmth Home Scheme is one of the issues that we're going to see more and more people struggling because the inability to get a new boiler or a new system in place for their homes. So that's just the reality of it. But unfortunately, we are where we are. But hopefully things will change for the communities that we represent and the people who live in them that are struggling because of the cost of living crisis. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Michaela. Members, there's no further indicated speakers, and I haven't heard any opposition to this. It's been proposed by Councillor Farrell, seconded by Councillor Doyle. If anyone's against, please let me know. Okay, member, that passes. Members, I'm going to take a 5-minute break here, and we'll be back at 2 minutes past 6. Thanks, members. Okay, welcome back, members. Members, the next item is item 10, which is the Community Centre Venue Fund Assessment Panel 22-23, pages 79 to 84, and Barry's going to take this item.
Thanks, Chair. Members, the purpose of this is to seek your approval for the recommendations of the Community Centre Venue Grant Aid Fund Assessment Panels. Members, you'll be aware back in 17-18, we introduced a new 3-year programme for this, and we extended it over the couple of years around COVID. In May of this year, we approved some changes to the programme, target areas, criteria and funding limits, and we extended it for 1 year further. It provides support to constituted not-for-profit organisations, and you can get up to a maximum of £12,000 in Tier 1, Tier 2, and the available budget overall within community development is £195,000. Tier 1 targets community centres based in one of the 3 rural DAs, total budget of £120,000, and Tier 2 funding targets community centres based in the 5 urban DAs, and the total budget for that is £75,000. Due to the amount of funding available, members, you'll see within your appendices, only 17 of the applicants will receive funding. The remaining 17 applications will be held in reserve should further funding become available. Members, you'll also be aware that we wrote to DFC asking for additional funding around us and grant aid, and we were informed that we wouldn't be receiving any additional budget for those purposes. So we are consulting with DFC and DAERA to discuss the difficulties of community groups keeping venues open, given the significant rise in energy costs, and to assess opportunities for further funding in this regard. So, members, as I've said previously, the total finance is £195,000. That's within our community development budgets. So the recommendation is that members approve the decisions of the assessment panels for community centre venue 22-23 as set out in Appendix 1. Susan Mullins also on the call, members, if there's any specific queries around some of this as well. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks for that, Barry. The first on the speaker is Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks to Barry for the presentation of this report. Before I get into my comments, can I declare an interest as a Director of the Greater Shantallow Area Partnership? The score 100, 110, 111 in any application, even up as far as 129. In my book, you're reading a very good and strong application. There should be no doubt about that. But in Tier 2, for example, Chair, we have an organisation which scored 111. We have another organisation just above that that scored 113. Both applied for £12,000. One got £7,500, the other got none. Now, I'm not criticising I am criticising the way that this was done, but it's not being critical of the assessment teams or anything like that, because, like my point earlier on about the Western Trust Department for Health, they're doing the role that this council, us as elected members, have asked them to do. But there's a serious flaw in this process, and it is, in my view, the way that this money is divvied out, because it is simply not reaching enough groups. And I know that, you know, there are 17 applications that are being held in the event that we might get funding to roll it out to them. But, and I think Barry has outlined it, you know, let's be serious. We already know we're not getting it. You know, we do. We already know we're not getting it. So I think it's disingenuous to suggest that we're holding them in the off chance that we might get funding, because it's not coming. And if it does come, how are we going to roll it out over 17? You know, the difference between some of these organisations and their scores is very, very little. And I think, you know, I know the process that we've gone through, and the 3 years and extension for another year and all of that. But I genuinely think that when we know that money coming from central government for these types of things, as much as we don't like it, it's being cut year on year. It's being cut. So I think we have to relook at our processes to make sure that we're getting the maximum amount out to the maximum number of organisations. So I think we have a body of work to do to see, is it worthwhile us changing our formula and our processes to make sure that we're hitting enough groups. And granted, that may mean that, you know, groups aren't getting, well, it will mean that groups aren't getting the amount that they may need or applied for, but it's a more even spread across the district. You know, what is it? 5 organisations fully funded, 2 partly funded in 5 DAs across the city. You know, that's a drop in the ocean to the money that is needed to run community venues, that provide so many different fantastic programs and courses for the people that we all collectively represent, because this isn't only impacting on one DA, it's impacting on every DA. So we all should be saying here, hold on a minute, yep, we get that this is the process that we've agreed that we would do, but surely now we can see that there's holes in it and we need to fix it, and we need to get round the table and have a discussion around what this type of programme may look like next year, because, as I say, this is a drop in the ocean to what's needed to help support community organisations and venues and keep them open, and particularly, you know, in a cost of living crisis that we're in. I just think we need to relook at it. Because of my declaration of interest as a member of the board of the Greater Chantal Area Partnership, I don't think it's appropriate that I propose that we accept this recommendation. I have no issue with the process that the process that was used by the team that we've asked them to do, but I think we need to look at it and possibly change it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tierney, I'm going to bring Barry in just to address some of those issues you raised.
Members, there's a couple of points through yourself, Chair, and in relation to Councillor Tierney's query. You're right, we have agreed it for 1 year. And if members recall, we brought a paper in a couple of months ago. We did review our criteria across the programme, including this, and we had a working group, and the elected members decided that our existing way of giving out the money was the best. We looked at different percentages. You know, if you scored the top percentage, the way we do in procurement, and everyone then gets a grade marked down. We consulted with the community, and in the main, the rural community groups that have been funded here rely almost 100% on our money. They don't get that support from any other groups. Some of the urban-based groups do, but they still obviously have a huge increase in their costs. So members did look at this in detail. I think we presented 4 or 5 different options, and members came back to say that this was the preferred way ahead, but with the caveat that there's not enough money in the budgets in terms of the spread right across the grant aid. So this is for 1 year, members, and yet we can look at that again in terms of not just this, because this raises its head with our grant aid or 4,000 and our good relations. There's always groups missing out by 1 or 2%, and they don't get any funding, and funding doesn't become available over the course of the year. And look, that's really difficult at the minute, but we have a limited budget, and this is the best model at present. I'm not saying that we can't do something different, but we'll have to go back to the drawing board. This is for a 1 year period, and we will take that on board in terms of if it means reconvening or setting up that working group again to look at the 4 or 5 options. But members did agree that this was the best option in recent months. It's a difficult one.
Is there Tierney happy enough? Do you want to come back in? Are you happy enough?
I'm content with the answer that I've got. No issue in that. I wouldn't use the word happy. No, I definitely wouldn't use the word happy. Barry did say that, and I think he may have been quoting elected members, that this is the best formula. I disagree. absolutely disagree, because it's not, in my opinion, it's not reaching enough groups. And that's where my issue is. There is 7 groups, 5 fully funded, 2 partly funded, and 5 DAs that are getting support for community centre venue fund from this council. I don't, there has to be a better way of doing this. I don't know what it is. I'm no expert, but you know, when you have got more being refused than being accepted, then surely everybody can see that there's a problem there. Thank you, and thanks to Barry for his presentation and answers. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Tierney. The next speaker is Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in. And as I look across, those who have got funding and those who haven't got funding, I do agree with the previous speaker. And I was one of the ones who sat on that working group, and we thought we had modelled it right to get a more even spread across. But I'll be the first to put my hands up when I look at the graphs here and the applications went in. We have got it wrong. And I do agree with the previous speaker that we need something here that gives a broader spread. And Chair, look, these are the same issues that I raised last year, and I'm going to raise the same issues this year again. When you look at Tier 1, Councillor Tierney, I nearly called him Alderman there. Councillor Tierney is right. When you look at applications that are, are hitting 111 from there up, those are pretty damn good. Good results coming in, at the end of the day. And when we look, seriously, when I look at the Tier 1 one, when I look at, we had 2 in from new buildings, one from the cricket club, one from the community centre. We had one from community, Ardegarvan and Kildoke. And for me, Chair, those are 3 venues from the heartlands of the PUL community. And neither of those 4 are getting funded. So I put my hand up. We thought we got the formula right, but we've got it wrong. When those groups look at that there, what confidence will they see in our council in the processes of getting money out there? And I know there are some groups who maybe don't get money. It won't affect them from continuing. They might have to drop down in some of the programs, but there are some of these within this program that I'm talking about, Chair, could be looking at closure. And I've said this last year. And look, we are where we're at the moment. Look, I don't want to disagree with the recommendation here, because those groups need the money. But Chair, I will be asking for the head of directorate and some council officers to meet with those 3 or 4 groups, especially from the PUL community that have lost out, till we have discussions with them, how we build that confidence again. And look, we keep the doors open, because we applauded these community centres a few years ago during the work that they carried out through COVID. And here we have some of them that can't even get £12,000. So really, really worrying, Chair. And look, I hope the directorate is available and some officers are available to meet with these groups before our full council meeting. But thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Devaney. The next speaker is Councillor Fleming.
Thanking you, Chair, and my apologies for missing the first couple of minutes of this report. And I did declare an interest earlier on, having sat on the working group. And certainly in terms of anything I'm saying, I don't want to be trying to go back over the arguments or make an excuse for what the working group came there didn't come to. And the bit that I did hear from councillors, I mean, I think there could be broad agreement, but when I say broad agreement, there's not enough money in the pot. And even in our other streams of funding, the other community facilities or other community lines of funding, there's not enough. When we see these lists, those that are successful and unfortunately those that aren't. So if we're
not serious about it because it's where do we get the extra funding in terms of we're on the routes and all of that there or coming from elsewhere. If you then look, and some people say, and maybe rightly say, can we divvy up the funding a bit better and you're on the end, what amount do you give out? And again, and I was looking on the workings of the working group, but there was a proposal they changed somewhat the criteria. I'm not for a minute suggesting that it would have been any different because I don't think it would have been anything marginally different or in any big sense. But there also was a proposal which wasn't accepted at the time, but was to take a look and talk to the groups. I know council officers have said they done consultation and fair enough, but there maybe needs to be a bit more of a wider and a deeper consultation. So, but it would also be a wee bit, and fair enough, you know, all politics are local, so people might want to start shouting about their own locality or their own groups. We're here to serve all of the council area and all of the groups fairly and without favour. So I think if there's, and certainly in terms of listening to Councillor Tierney, I mean, I don't have any issue if people want to, and we probably do need to take a look at this, but we also need to not build people's hopes up falsely. You know, that there, and again, as he rightly says, there's no point us saying we're holding this for further funding unless something dramatic happens, there won't be further funding in this. But it's not just this time, it's all of our programs that we've put out there. There's not enough funding to cover all of the groups. But if there's people certainly want to take a look at to see how the formula is worked out and how the balance is worked out, then I think at all times we should be open to come back and take a look at that there. But let's not, well, we can kid ourselves if we want, but let's not kid groups out there either, that every groups and every funding stream is going to get funded unless we come up with a magic formula. Thanking you.
Thank you. Councillor Fleming. The next speaker is Councillor Doyle.
Thanks, Chair. And, you know, I agree with the sentiments of some previous speakers, particularly in what Councillor Fleming has said about not getting people's hopes up, because there's never going to be a point where we're going to have the resources to fund all of the great organisations out there to the level that they ask for or need. But there's definitely a need to change this formula. From memory, I don't ever remember. Maybe the working group was before my time, but and I appreciate the work that people have put into it in the past. But there's definitely a need to look at this and to look at the criteria, I think, for the scheme, because I get the sense that, you know, looking at some of the organisations, that effectively what we were saying to people is, if you have got, you know, bricks and mortar, come forward and let's talk about this scheme. I think we need, what we do need to be doing is being a bit more shrewd in terms of services delivered, for example, in individual organisations, what their actual needs are, because at the moment, whilst at times it may have been favourable for us to engage with groups on the basis that they could apply to this fund if they simply had a venue, I think we do need to look at that. So I noticed, because the previous speakers had declared an interest, that no one had proposed this. I'm not going to stand in the way. I don't think anybody does want to, of the awards that are going to be made as a result of this. So I'm happy to propose, but on the basis that we add a 5.2 to the recommendations, which is that the working group be reconvened as soon as possible, so we can have these wider discussions in terms of criteria and in terms of options for funding.
Thank you. Councillor Doyle. Next speaker is Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I was a member of the working group, and I'm happy to second the paper we have forward. We have in front of us at this moment in time. I understand the frustrations of the previous speakers. We have 36 amazing organisations, 36 amazing organisations who have worked really, really hard on applications and all deserve the money in which they applied for. And we wish, all of us as councillors wish that we were able to give that to them. Unfortunately, we don't have the budget. Through the working group, which was only a couple of months ago, we sat and we looked at the different options, and where you could go down the percentage and split the money differently. What we were inevitably presented with was that these community groups, and a lot of them, my DEA, rural ones, depend on this funding, depend on the top tier, the £12,000 or as much as they can get to keep their doors open. And if we were then to start going down the percentage route and give them smaller amounts, it would have been a lot of work for them for a pot of money that might not necessarily help. It might not necessarily be what they need. You know, if the models in which we were being shown, you know, people were getting small increments that wouldn't be able to keep their lights on or keep their heating on. I don't think the model's perfect. I do think, you know, hopefully we can come up with some other way in which we can get more funding for these groups. But I do think what we're looking at here is 36 amazing groups who have put in a very good bid for money, and it's a very competitive space. And because we don't have a great deal of money, we've had to go through this process. But I was there at the working group, and it was considered, you know, even the aspect of the rural ones, and now identifies the fact that the rural council or the rural community groups don't have access to some of the funding streams through DFC that other urban areas. So I appreciate how that has worked out, and that we do have a number of more areas covered here within the rural DEA. So I'm happy to second the proposal. I'm also happy to go back into the working group. I'm happy to go through the models. But I will say that the councillors that were at the working group were very considerate of all the options, and we're trying to find a way forward that would suit everybody, but also within taking in consideration of the community groups and not just giving them a small bit of funding because they scored well, but giving them the funding that they deserved. And to be fair, all of the 36 groups have passed and deserve the funding. We just need to put it back to the departments and say that they do need more support. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. The next indicated speaker is Alderman Guy.
Thank you, Chair. And I totally agree with previous speakers. Totally agree with Councillor Fleming when he said the pot of money isn't there for this. I think it was myself and my colleague Alderman Hussey who asked that this was taken to a working group and be reviewed, the whole process, this time last year. Now, the working group, we sat down, we looked at everything. I think we all agreed then to go with this process again, but I think we had brought up a case where the top 3 or 4 would get the full money and then we'd work in percentages. Now, I understand what Councillor Ferguson is saying, that they've all scored highly. They've basically got, they've basically achieved the right to get £12,000, but there's not £12,000 there available for everybody. So it's a case of you take it down to a certain amount, a certain substantial amount, and we work out percentages there, because we have 19 community centres who have got no money at all. And they probably, I would say, you were looking at maybe, let's say, between 10 and 14 of them that aren't going to see any money. The others might be lucky enough to see it, but then again, they may not. So, you know, you have to see, is it better getting nothing, or is it better getting 12 grand, or nothing at all? Because I think a lot of them, their community groups at the minute, would be happy to see 5, 6 grand, you know, if that's what they were getting. Especially those ones who, as Barry says, it's obviously the rural community groups are basically find it harder getting funding streams. So is it a case where I don't want to say make it easier for them, because it's, you know, everybody's put on a good you know, application, but I think we have to look at that there formula there, where if it's harder for those groups in rural areas to get funding, then there has to be something set up for those groups alone. And I know there's groups within my community who haven't been lucky enough to get it, but I know there's other funding streams for them. And I think I'm happy enough to start up this working group again and discuss it, because it definitely does need discussed. But thank you, Chair. I'm happy to support the call for the working group to be reinstated.
Thank you, Alderman Guy. The next indicated speaker is Alderman Hussey.
Thanks, and I'll be brief. Obviously, our group leader has addressed the issue, but let's be honest, folks, this is embarrassing. You have groups throughout the council area who have reached a threshold, and you know, when you pass the test, when you get over the bar, to find yourself, you've done all the work, but sorry, there's nothing left. But as Councillor Fleming has said, the real issue perhaps isn't the system, it's the lack of resource to address the issues that we've been faced with. We've been asked to make bricks without straw. Quick question, this is a community venue fund, but we fund organisations. Am I correct in assuming that all of the organisations that receive the funding for a particular venue are, I know in some cases they're not the sole occupants of particular venues, but would it be fair to say that each and every one is the anchor tenant? Do we also take account of other activities that may go on in some of the venues? Some of them may, for example, have a licensed bar within the premises, fund, you know, internal fundraising. Are all of those issues included in the assessment criteria? But I think the main one is, can we be assured that it is the anchor tenant, or in some cases the only tenant, but is it the anchor tenant that would be the group receiving the funding for the venue that they hold the license or the lease on, or actually own? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey. And do we have Susan on the line? She may be able to answer your queries there, Alderman Hussey.
Yes, Chair. Yeah, it is the anchor tenant, yeah, that puts on the application. And just in terms of the list of activities, there is scoring within the criteria for the range of activities that community development activities that take place in the centre. So organisations are asked to list the range of activities, for instance, you know, childcare, youth activities, women's groups, whatever, and the applications then are scored accordingly, depending on the number of activities and whether those are weekly activities or annual activities or whatever. So the more activities in the centre, then the higher score that you get.
Chair, one quick supplementary to that then. The other activities may not necessarily be organised by the particular applicant. It may be another group, and that group itself may actually have access to other funding elsewhere. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's the entire activities that take place in the centre. So some centres do have a lot of activities that they put on themselves, but a lot of centres, as you say, bring in other organisations or buy in other activities, or other organisations run activities in their centre. Those are all considered. So it's really looking to fund those centres that are providing maybe the widest level of community activity within that geographical area that gets the highest marks.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Susan. Alderman Hussey. The next speaker is Councillor Farrell.
Thanks, Chair. I would agree with the sentiments of most speakers here. There's not enough money in the pot. Venues across the city and district applied for a total of £418,000 and we have 195 grand in the budget. So we can't keep or get a desirable outcome for every single organisation that's applied. 19 venues across the city and district aren't getting a penny. And I wasn't on the working group, but happy to second and support Councillor Doyle's amendment to reconvene the working group to look at this. But I would agree with Alderman Guy in terms of this money should be spread more evenly. We should look at the total budget and try and fund as many venues as possible. But I've got a question for Barry. There's a massive disparity in terms of the scores that have been achieved. The lowest score was 79 and the highest score was 164. So what's the total score? Just to give us an understanding of percentage. And is there a threshold? Is there a threshold where you have to hit a certain score before you'd even be considered for funding, or is everybody considered?
Thank you, Councillor Fart. I'm going to bring Susan back in to answer that. Susan, if you're there. Thank you.
Yeah, the total score, the maximum score that could be achieved is 175. You can see there the range was from 164 down to 79. And those most of the applications, as members have outlined, have been of very high standard. Those applications that maybe scored 79 or 89, there are various reasons for that. In some instances, there were questions that weren't answered. In some instances, the level of activities were a lot lower than maybe some other applicants. So there's a range of reasons for that. Or maybe there was a question that wasn't answered completely. But in the whole, most of the applications scored really high. We didn't, as outlined in the report, we have written to the department, we've spoken to the lottery and DERA in relation to some of the venues. So what we've outlined in the scoring is all of the applications and what they scored, and we didn't put a threshold on there because to ensure that if money became available, all of these venues that are all providing a really good service could be funded in the event that we would receive funding from any of those organisations. So that's why there was no threshold score put in there.
Answer your question, Councillor Farr? Do you want to come back in?
Yeah, but there is no threshold, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Susan. The next on the speaker is Councillor Jackson.
Good Chair, and I know Councillor Fleming has outlined our party's position on it, but just on the wider piece, because I know reconvening a working group, having another look at the formula is all to be welcomed. If there's any way that we can allocate the funding in a more fair basis, that's to be welcomed. But I would tend to agree with a lot of what's been said already, and it's that the amount of funding available simply isn't enough. And I take Susan's point on board around the council's already been communicating some of the challenges to the department. I know that the minister, the communities minister, very recently on this very issue has went and visited community centres right across the north, has listened to the challenges that they're facing, and the message coming through is that there's a huge percentage of community centres right across the north that are simply unsustainable. And the minister was very clear in her responses that the department or our government as a whole need to treat this like a pandemic. The cost of utility bills, the running costs is rising at a rate that no one has ever seen before. So it simply isn't sustainable, and the pressure is very, very real. The response to this needs to be a government-wide response. And this is just another example where, at a grassroots level, essential services that every single one of us can acknowledge that have been vital, that are that so many people rely on within our council district, they're just another casualty of the DUP stance, blocking government working in this part of the world. So we welcome anything that we can do to try and allocate the limited resources that we've got in a better way. But the solution and the answer to this lies solely with the DUP, and that needs to be pointed out very clearly. And I hope that the DUP representatives on this committee take that back and instruct their leadership to end the boycott of the executive and allow vital support to get on their communities as soon as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Tierney.
Chair, thank you for bringing me back on again. I just want to clarify, I think some of the members who may have been on the working group may have got a little bit defensive around the comments that particularly I had made around the formula. I'm not saying that, you know, the working group got it wrong with the information that they were given at that time. I'm equally not saying that officers gave them the wrong information. What I'm saying is at that time, I've no doubt that they made what they thought was the best decision. But when you see it rolled out like this and you've got more groups not getting funding than you have getting funding, surely you have to scratch your head and go, here, hold on a minute, maybe we got this wrong. Or maybe because we don't have a big enough budget, we need to relook at this until a time when Jeffrey Donaldson catches himself on and goes back onto the executive, that funding can be released, and then we relook at it again. But for the budget that we have now, in the circumstances that we're in, seeing it rolled out, I don't think that this is the best way to go, and we will be certainly happy to see the working group reconvened and have that conversation. And if I'm wrong, and this is the best way to do it, then fine. But I don't see any reason why we wouldn't go and double check it. But I want to also address comments that were made, particularly around what one councillor thinks that the director of this committee should do. And that was that she should go and meet with the groups who didn't score well, particularly groups from the PUL community, almost making out as if the groups from the PUL community deserve this funding more than those from nationalist groups. Any other councillor who was speaking, and certainly when I was speaking, I was making sure that I'm annoyed that not enough groups got it from across the council area, not about their community background. If they've scored enough and there's funding there, regardless of their community background, give it to them. But if the director is going to meet with groups who didn't get funded around this process, then she should meet with them all, not those only, or especially, or particularly from one community background or another, because that will cause more problems in this committee than the rollout of this funding. And I think that that member needs to think about his comments because it could lead us down a very, very difficult road that we certainly don't want to be going down. This is about getting money out of groups, not about cherry picking your own particular group that you want to see get funded. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Tierney. Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me back in. And just in light of the previous comments, you know, it's up to every member of this committee who they want to meet with. And I believe at a standard that if a group fails to get funding or loses out in funding, there is an onus on our directorate or officers to go and see where, maybe where they could get an extra 10 points, or where they fell down that they didn't get up into the higher scoring that got them funding. And I'm not saying that should only be for members of the PUL community. I'm saying that's up to every group, and I think that's open to every group that hasn't received funding here. And that doesn't dilute anything that I have said. And I only raised the issue when you look at Tier 1, you could look very, very clearly. And there were 4 PUL from the PUL community venues within those areas. Not one of them were funded. And that's the only question that I have asked. And I've said this last year, it's about growing the expertise and around those areas where we can't get funding. And you're right, there isn't enough money in the funding. And I believe we are right to go back to DAERA and Department of Communities to see if we can get extra funding, because these groups all deserve the money. The ones I'm really concerned about is, some of them maybe are, some of the venues are receiving other funding. There are some within the group that I spoke about don't receive much other funding. There are some receives substantially more funding, and I think that's really where the problem lies. And then around the criteria, if you're in an area, if the delivery of what services is near you, it could be a service 7 miles away, and it affects your application by 10, I think 30 points could be the maximum. You could be down to 10, so you lose out in 20. And that's what I want to talk to the directorate about and officers and around that scoring mechanism, and explain that to the groups. I'm not saying that the PUL community should get money over anyone else, but at the end of the day, we are a minority group in there, and I'm only fighting for those people who will raise the concerns with me after the message goes out that they haven't received funding. But I'm happy with that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Alderman Devaney. Members, this item has been 5.1 has been proposed by Councillor Doyle and Councillor Ferguson, with added in that the working group will be reconvened. I've heard of a lot of discontent around the scoring and how the fundings work out, but I haven't heard anyone go against the current allocations to get this funding out to our local community centres. So members, I'm going to take that as 5.1 as proposed, along with reconvening the working group. If anyone wants to go against that, please let me know. Okay, members, that's passes. Members, I'm going to move on to item 11, which is the consensual grant making model 2021-22 Act on plan for the Waterside DA and Fawn. DEA's pages 85 to 98 in your packs, and Barry's going to take this item.
Members, I'll not go into the full detail, but the purpose of this is for your approval on the consensual grant making action plan received for Waterside Fawn, aligned to local community planning. Members, you'll be aware that the lead group in the Waterside have requested a change to the action plan, and following approval of the original action plan in February, a letter of offer had been issued. So if members approve the attached action plan, a new letter of offer will supersede the letter of offer we previously submitted. You'll see in section 3.4, the plan outlined in Appendix 1 has been received from Waterside. The new action plan will replace the previous action plan. And it's been there's also in Appendix 2, the Fawn DA plan has been received. There's £12,000, leaving an underspend of £3,000, which will be added to the 22-23 budget for Fawn DA. So members, there's no additional financial implications for council. All the money is in current budget. So the recommendation is that members approve and endorse the revised action plan submitted by Waterside for the 21-22 financial year, and including the issue of a letter of offer to the lead group Waterside Neighbourhood Partnership Board for £15,000, and that members approve and endorse the action plan submitted by the Fawn DA for 21-22, including an issue of a letter of offer to the lead group Claudy Rural Development Limited for £12,000 and £3,000 to be carried forward to 22-23 budget allocations for Fawn. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Barry, and Councillor Fleming, go ahead.
Sorry, Chair, just to propose the item.
Thank you, Councillor Fleming. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Doyle, second. Thank you. Okay, members, that's item 11. Item 12 is the Social Supermarket Support Fund 2022-2023, pages 99 to 100 in your pack. And Barry, again, is taking this one.
Thanks, Chair. Members, the purpose of this is to update you on the Social Supermarket Support Fund and seek approval for an allocation of £20,000 to support the co-design process. You'd be aware we had previous reports in, members, in recent months, and Council have received a letter of offer from DFC for £107,051.55 as an allocation to the Social Supermarket Fund. The Department have initiated co-design groups in each council area, and the co-design group for Derry City and Strabane District Council area includes representation from each of the local growth partnerships, the food banks, social supermarkets, and is led by Department for Community officials. Support for the co-design process will require research, a wide consultation process with all stakeholders, an outcomes framework, funding model and a 3-year action plan for food support wraparound service model for the council area. It is recommended that an allocation of £20,000 is provided from the DFC funding to engage a consultancy to carry out this work. Further recommendations will be presented to members at a later date in relation to the allocation of the balance of the £107,000. With regards to the finance, it's 100% funded, members. So the recommendation is an approval of £20,000 from this Social Supermarket Fund to provide support for the co-design process. Thanks.
Thanks, Barry. Councillor Doyle, you want in on this item?
Just a quick question about it, Chair, really. Where did the 20,000 come from? Did we do a pre-market engagement exercise around how much it would cost potentially, or is this something that's been, the DFC have said, we think it's going to cost around 20,000 for a consultant to do this work? Because I'm conscious that if we take, it's a substantial amount of money from the 107. So I'm just conscious of where we got the 20,000 out of, because obviously we want as much money as possible to go into the operational costs. Thanks.
Through yourself, Chair, yeah, that's a figure provided by DFC. It mightn't actually take, it's up to including that amount, so if it's less, the remainder of the money can go into the overall budget.
Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Chair. It's around the same sort of issue. You see, in terms of the consultant around the co-design process, do we have to go with a consultant, or can we do this in-house and save the 20 grand? Because it's obviously coming out of the overall fund, and the more you have at the end of this, once it's designed and it's ready to be rolled out, then the more support you're offering out. So I don't know if that's possible or if it's even allowed within the letter of offer, but if it is, it's something that we might consider.
Through yourself, Chair, it's not something we would have internal resource or expertise, Councillor Tierney, to do. Social supermarkets is something, if you remember from previous papers, was a central government initiative, and it's now been passed to council through a letter of offer, so we don't have any resources. It's our community development team who are leading on the framework around this on behalf of the AFC, but this is essentially something that central government used to do, so we wouldn't have either the resource or expertise to do it.
Thank you. Councillor Tierney, anyone else? Councillor Boyd?
Chair, thank you. Chair, just to approve the allocation of £20,000 for the social supermarket and welcome the overall funding initially. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Boyd. So you're proposing there, Councillor Boyd? Yep. Do we have a seconder? Yep, Councillor Tierney. Okay, members, we're going to move on to item 13, which is a request from the City of Derry Swimming Club for additional pool access, pages 101 to 106 in your pack, and Barry is again going to take this on.
Thanks, Chair. Members, the purpose of this report is to seek your views on a request from City of Derry Swimming Club for additional pool access at both Templemore Sports Complex and Foyle Arena, and to update members on the implications of this request on our pool timetable. Most members will be aware through previous briefings, members, that club officials have approached senior council officers requesting extra pool sessions. And as you're aware, City of Derry Swimming Club have been displaced from City Bath due to the significant works required at that site. Historically, City of Derry would have significant pool time at both City Baths and Templemore. They require pool time for both their club squad and their development programmes. And they also run learn to swim lessons for the children that would equate to significant numbers attending each week. And just for reference, members, the pool time at City Baths, probably City of Derry, where there are roughly around 37% of the facilities opening hours. They currently have 8 hours of pool time at Templemore and a further 4 hours at Foyle Arena per week. City of Derry, in the initial discussions with officers, and I know they've emailed members this week, they've requested a further 1.5 hours of pool time early on a Tuesday morning to facilitate an extra session for the club swimmers, and they also require a further 2 hours of pool time in the main pool and minor pools for their learn to swim lessons. Council run our own learn to swim programme with our lessons being delivered in both Templemore, Foyle Arena and Riversdale. The lessons represent our second largest revenue stream for our sport and leisure facilities to help offset our running costs. In order to operate our Learn to Swim programme, management must balance the demands from clubs and the public. Allocations for the public, clubs, schools, groups and council's own programmes continue to be a challenge when scheduling pool use. Templemore and Foyle Arena coordinate programmes so that Isler Pool will remain open for public swimming, while club activity and our own Learn to Swim programme is actually taking place here in the city. City of Derry have expressed that their priority focus will be their squad and development teams. They require 1.5 hours extra pool time on a Tuesday morning for their squad. We currently within Templemore facilitate 2 early morning sessions for the club. The centre staff open up outside normal opening hours for the club squad athletes. Foyle Arena have offered the club 4 lanes on a Tuesday from 6:30 to 7:30. And in order to meet their early opening request outside contracted shifts, Foyle Arena management would be required to go into local negotiations with staff and extra costs to budget to facilitate this. And given the demand in public swimming at this site, this would have also a negative effect on popular public early morning swimming. City of Derry's Learn to Swim programme is a separate swimming programme to council's own. The club will request an additional 2 hours of pool time for their Learn to Swim at peak time. Agreeing to this request could have a detrimental effect on council's ability to meet the demand of our own lessons, but also primarily public swimming lessons. It's very difficult to balance the competing needs of the public, the club and the council swimming lesson programmes. It's very difficult to prioritise one above the other, particularly with City Baths being shut. In offering extra pool time to City of Derry throughout the week to accommodate the request, this may affect and displace other historic club bookings. Demand for our Learn to Swim lessons remain high. However, public also remain vocal in their request for extra public swimming sessions. And members should be aware in terms of our income generation, council's own Learn to Swim programme, in order to grow to meet the demand and assist with generating further income. We would also displace public or club bookings if we were to grow our programme. So members, you'll see in the table, there's a table there, looking at possible solutions at Foyle Arena and Templemore Sports Complex, but I thought it was important just to show you the context. There is a possible solution at most times, apart from a couple when we have other things on, and I've given you the knock-on impact of each of them. So, and that's at Foyle Arena and Templemore. Other groups, if we facilitate requests such Northwest Triathlon and Foyle Paddlers, would be displaced to accommodate extra sessions as well. And members, at the outset, it's important to say, we're very sympathetic to the club's request for additional pool time. But as can be seen, this will have a knock-on effect of another demographic of users. So if you look, members, at Foyle Arena, we could offer the 4 lanes on Tuesday mornings from 6:30 to 7:30. Some members of the public may not be happy with that particular request because it will impact on their early morning swimming, but that's something we could work with members of the public on and work with the City of Derry Swimming Club and their squad. The other most favourable option probably is a Saturday in terms of if we're not displacing other clubs or reducing income through our own Learn to Swim programme or adult Learn to Swim programme, is no public swimming in Isler pools from 10 to 12 on a Saturday morning with the public. That would allow City Darien to run their Learn to Swim programme. So we're working very closely with the club, and look, members of the club do appreciate the difficulties that we have as a council with the city baths shut, that it's very, very different to balance the competing demands of all users of both our swimming pools and Derry here. So the recommendations, members, are that you consider the requests for extra pool time from the club, and that members note the implications of approving these requests in terms of public swimming, after school programmes, clubs and council's own Learn to Swim programme. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that, Barry. The first indicated speaker is Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to Barry again for that report. I have a number of questions. First of all, the report points out the difficulties that we face, and I would just like to point out that for anybody who's wondering or questioning, do we or don't we need city baths? I think this is a prime example that we do. That should be noted as well. The paper outlines, as I understand it, that City Derry have requested an hour and a half extra for their squad club swimmers and 2 hours extra for their Learn to Swim programme. And that's it. That's 3.5 hours.
Through yourself, Chair, that was the initial request to us at a meeting the same day as the elected member briefing, but I'm aware that subsequently they've sent a request for 7. I think it's 7 hours to elected members, or 7.5 hours.
7.5, yeah. 7.5. So we don't actually know what they want at this stage. They're telling officers that they want 3.5, and they're telling us that they want 7.5. I think we need to get that sort of worked out before we do anything. Look, City of Derry, as we all know, have a long history in this city, and we certainly want to support them and do all we can to help them and to ensure that they're able to offer their services and their club remain to grow. However, there are only a certain amount of hours in the day that the pool can be opened, and city baths being closed, this proves a real difficulty in terms of availability. I do think we should be working towards solutions with City of Derry, and I do appreciate it's not very often that you get a paper that's telling you about a difficulty that we're facing, or that an organisation is facing, but outlines very clearly what the possible solutions are as well. So I think that's very useful to have that included in the graphs. I'm wondering also, have those possible solutions been put to City of Derry, or are they being put to us first to see if it's something that we can agree with? And if that's not the case and they have been put to City of Derry, what was the response? Is this something, because I appreciate that it's a possible solution for council, but I want to know, is that a possible solution as well for City of Derry? Because I think that's important, because there's no point in us agreeing something if it's not going to work for them. I also, we have issues around city baths. We all know that. We've all been briefed, and I know that officers are working through that process. But for anyone who knows it, city baths is very many ways 2 separate facilities within the one building. So, for example, the small pool, or the wee pool as we would have called it, in city baths, has its own disabled access, has its own changing facilities, has its own pool, and has its own entrance and exit. Is it a possibility that, now remember that that whole facility is closed off from the main pool at City Baths, the big pool, the 10-foot pool? Is it a possibility that we could host some of these hours in the wee pool? Because I understand that a lot of the issues with City Baths are with the big pool and the facilities in and around the big pool. So is it a possibility where we could basically close off any entrance to where the issues are and still run a service from the wee pool that might be able to facilitate some of these errors, because it's I don't know if it's an option, but it's something that I think if we can consider it, we should. So I think that's another thing. But also in relation to the hours that are being offered, it's my understanding as well that City of Derry are very much term time in their requests. So I'm assuming that any possible solutions wouldn't need to come into effect until September. And we have a bit of time, hopefully, to work through that. So there are just some issues and concerns that I have, Barry. We want to support City of Derry. We want to support the schools programme, and we want to support and make sure that there's accessibility for the general public as well. We're in the middle of the summer, and I've said it before, I spent most of my summers as a child in city baths, and children, it's a time where they look forward to getting to the pool. So we don't want to be doing anything that's going to hinder on that either. So I think it's about finding that solution that works for everybody. And thankfully, if it is term time, we've got those couple of weeks now through August to try and rattle this out and get something agreed between ourselves and City of Derry. But I don't know, Barry, if you want to answer those, or the thanks a million.
Through yourself, Chair. The first one, there's a confusion about the hours. City of Derry could avail of 7.5 hours to try and get up to their levels pre-city baths closing, but what they're saying to officers is that they have a real demand for 3.5 to be able to operate. So look, it'd be great if we could give them 7.5, but they're saying really, look, we need to try and find 3.5 hours. In terms of the building and the pool, the issue with city baths is the entire building. The building is not able to be opened at all until the money is spent. The project that we're out to tender on, no part of the building can be opened or operated or open to the public. So that isn't an option. Councillor Tierney, you're right. In terms of the third one, term time, City of Derry run off the school timetable, their squads and they're learn to swim. So it would only be a request for that period of time when schools are open. So from an officer point of view, I think we can manage the Foyle Arena and the 4 lanes and engaging with the members of the public. So the question is, are elected members content to look at the other 2 hours, which would mean we'd be cancelling public swimming for a 2-hour period during the week to facilitate City of Derry's request? Because we've only limited hours in the pool. And as I've highlighted, officers, it's a difficult balancing act with clubs, with their own Learn to Swim programme, with public swimming, with training and all of that. So, you know, we can't create additional hours. We can't open the building outside of the hours. We already do it for them. So we feel we can facilitate their squad one that morning a week in Foyle Arena. The question is, are members comfortable giving them 2 hours, which would mean 2 hours less to the public within Templemore on a weekly basis? Thanks, Chair.
Yep, thank you. Thanks for that. I'm just coming back, and again, you know, in terms of the possible solutions, have they been put to City of Derry? And just in your response, it would mean taking 2 hours off the public swimming. Do we know what those 2 hours may be? You know, is it 8 to 9, 2 nights a week, or you know, what is it? And what pool is that request for?
Your first question around, City of Derry are aware of all of the options. We've scoped these out in a number of meetings with them, highlighted the programmes we have on the pool timetable. They're fairly aware of the pool timetable, you would imagine, in both Foyle Arena and in Templemore. So yeah, look, the difficulty is that it's mainly peak hours when they are requesting, because people are at school and trying to get kids and that from school over to both swimming pools. So you'll see in your table there, Councillor Tierney, the options around school swimming, around public swimming is one of the possibilities is Saturday. They're looking both pools, 10 a.m. to 12, and that we would be run. So for example, if they were in Templemore at 10 to 12 we have our own lessons on us in Foyle Arena on a Saturday morning. It means between 10 and 12 there'll be no public swimming in either of the dairy pools.
Okay, thanks for that, Barry. The next speaker is Alderman Guy.
Thank you, Chair. And where, as Councillor Tierney there was saying about the city baths being a necessity, I think it says more how bad a decision it was to close Listy Galvin Leisure Centre. But there's no doubt City of Derry Swimming Club, they've been using the city baths for years. I've left many's a dedicated swimmer off at all times, no date, you know, and especially young disabled ones that were dedicated as well to their swimming times. But I'm not sure because I missed the meeting of the update about city baths, so I'm not sure whether this was discussed at that. But I would like to know just sort of financially. I know there's talk about it could mess up the swimming classes that council run at Foyle Arena. And I know there that the club is actually looking to run their own swimming. Do they charge people for them swimming classes? Would that be a case of us giving up time to let someone else make money off our premises as such? And could we get a detailed report of the financial implications if we were to give up these times before we do make any decision on it? Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Brett.
Through yourself, Chair. I don't have the exact detail. City of Derry, they have their development squads, you know, their competitive swimmers, and they've also their Learn to Swim program, you know, which, you know, I'm not sure what they charge, but it's like most clubs, it's a valuable income source for them to run their club business, but they would hire the pool from us, be it a squad session or their Learn to Swim program. They would pay the hourly rate for it, you know, to hire, be it was in City Baths or be it Templemore, Foyle Arena, you know, so we can, we will have a further meeting with the club. I'm meeting with them on a regular basis now, so look, we can request that they provide Alderman, but look, I'm not sure if they will provide that detail to us as officers. All we know is what we charge them for an early rate to hire a pool hall. So we can certainly ask them to provide information, and we can bring it back a further report into committee in September if members wish.
Yeah, but just even for what council ourselves would make on them times for the swimming lessons that council charge as well. If we could get a financial report just on that compared to the times they're asking for, be much appreciated. Thanks.
Yep, thank you, Alderman Guy. Barry's going to take that as an action and bring a report back. The next speaker is Councillor McGinley.
Good Chair. Thank you for letting me in, and thank you, Barry, for the report. I'm sure, like other members, we've all received the updates and the requests for support from City of Derry, and you know, I think as a council for a local sort of club that has the history that Councillor Tierney's referred to, we do need to be trying to do all we can to support them. That being said, I'm just wondering, Barry, it's similar to what Alderman Guy had referred to there, you know, in terms of the Saturday option. If there was no public swimming in either of the pools, what would the financial impact be to council, and what would that be in comparison to what we charge for the hourly rate to City of Derry? That's just one question I would have. I think there's sort of maybe a general agreement that I'm picking up, I could be wrong, on the Tuesday mornings, and if City of Derry have indicated that their priority is their squad training, then that would be their priority. If that's doable and you think it's feasible, I think we should definitely look at that. But in terms of the additional 2 hours, if you're saying a Saturday, you know, what would the financial impact be to council if we were to give up those 2 hours of public swimming?
Yeah, we, Councillor McGinley, we can look at that detail and present that in any subsequent report comes in. Just off the top of my head, without having exact figures, I don't think there would be a huge impact if there would be, because City Dairy for that 2-hour period would pay for the hire of the pool hall. We may be busy some Saturdays. We may have a lot of pensioners in who don't pay at that particular time. So, but we'll get that information, when we look at historic Saturday mornings for public swimming, and we'll do a comparison in some sort of tabular format for September if members are content with that.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yep. Councillor McGinn, you're happy enough with that?
I know that's perfect. It's just to get a bit more detail on the actual impact that it's going to have before we make any decision.
Okay. Yep. Definitely. Thank you. The next speaker is Councillor Harkin.
Thanks, Chair. And look, I'm going to try and be as brief as I can because this is a long discussion and I'm finding it actually quite frustrating. So first of all, first thing I want to say is at the start of this process, we were told that that we would be able to accommodate everybody, and we had plenty of space in Foyle Arena and Templemore, and the city baths would, it wouldn't matter that it was closed. We're finding out that's not the case. So that's just the first thing. The second thing is, look, it is frustrating that there's been all these delays now because it's clear that we actually need the city baths because there isn't enough capacity, it seems to me, at Foyle Arena and Templemore. So, that's just from the outset. The third thing is, I think this is incredibly difficult to try and figure out here at a council meeting with people having bits and pieces of information. There's all sorts of questions that arise. We want to accommodate everybody, right? We want to make sure City of Derry are able to have the space or the capacity that they need to service what they do. We don't want to be saying no to City of Derry because I'm sure they're not just making things up to make council officers' lives difficult. This is what they need to be able to run their club effectively and to produce great swimmers and to train people to be swimmers. We also don't want to undermine public swimming because I would be very frustrated if I was trying to get children in for a swim or exercise and I was told now that's going to be taken off me. So, but trying to figure out what's the best times, there's in terms of revenue, you'd need to know how many people are swimming at a particular time, and that's what I'm frustrated about. It seems to me that the details involved in this would be far better worked out with people sitting in a room together who actually are over the top of all the details to do with who swims, what revenue it brings in, how will it impact if you move something around, and how do we make sure that nobody is left angry about this. And I don't think that that's what we're actually doing right now. I think that we have a load of councillors here looking at this and are going to be saying we're not sure how to figure this out and we need more information. So I don't actually understand how it was even presented in the way it's been presented today. That's not going to get the city baths opened any sooner, but I think we're spending an awful amount of time and our conclusion is going to be we're not sure, we need more information. So I just think that this has been, I don't know why it was thrown at us like this, because it's not going to solve the problem, and it's not going to be the City of Derry are creating a problem for the council, so throw it over to the councillors who are not going to be able to figure it out. So this I think we're all aware now of the challenges we're faced in terms of trying to make sure we accommodate everyone. I don't think that this is the best way to do it. I actually want to propose on the back of this now that we should have a city baths working group that can actually help with something like this and other problems that might arise in the future, because I imagine that capacity is going to grow through a combination of people going back out now and beginning to use facilities more because of where we are with the COVID. And if we actually do move some of the if we do find more hours, the City of Derry and maybe others, and there's going to be issues as well about us being able to be over the top as councillors what actually is happening, because there's been times where we have been told one thing and made assumptions and then find out months later that we shouldn't have made those assumptions and the information we got is wrong. So I'm proposing that we set up a city baths working group that can meet bi-monthly if necessary, and to be over the top of the details around the progress of getting it fixed, but also over something like this where we'd be able to discuss I think in something that's incredibly detailed in an easier way. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin. Can I ask you to put the proposal just in the chat box, and we'll come to it after we deal with this paper, Councillor Harkin, if that's okay? The next speaker is Councillor Doyle.
Chair, and thanks, Barry, for the paper. I don't think it's complex, but I don't think it's misleading in any way. One of the things that I'd like to maybe ask is, in terms of the performance of the club, I know that because I'm knowing very little about swimming and not being able to swim. I can't swim, no. I turn over in the water like a dead fish, but sure, that's another story for another day. Do the club require X amount of training to be undertaken before they can involve themselves in competitions? And the reason why I ask is because recently we had a discussion around football teams who had to do that to meet a requirement, for example, for a specific cup or anything along those lines. I would be interested just in seeing the activity levels of each site, because obviously if it's very dry, if we'd like to call it that, on a specific day or time in Foyle Arena or Templemore, it's given us a solution. I don't want to cross a Rubicon here, and it might be a bit controversial, but I'm wondering if we get to a position where we are up against it, is there any way that we can look at a district-wide solution, where we might have to move, for example, some whatever it may be, slots to facilities maybe in Strabane. Not for a second suggesting we send City of Derry up to Strabane, but on a council-wide basis, we could maybe coordinate, full accessibility to do it that way. The only other one thing that did have, Barry, was I understand obviously for situations like this where City of Baths City of Derry baths are closed. City baths. Where people have come to you about this, specifically the officers. But I do think maybe these things might happen more over the next weeks and months. Whether it would be summer schemes, things along those lines. Do we have any kind of or should we have any kind of a process for this to come forward? Because I do think, well, I still agree with what Sean said necessarily about the information. I do think it's to get something like this that happening 2 or 3 times, and us to physically sit here as elected reps and try to fiddle about with the timetables of individual facilities is probably not the best way to go about it. But I generally don't think that we need any type of a working group, if I'm honest. I do think we could have other discussions about it, but certainly not another working group. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Doyle. In terms of their competitive squad, I think it was your first question. They do require that additional hour on the Tuesday morning, an hour and a half preferably, they've said, and that will adequately serve them in terms of their squad. But I think the balance here is their Learn to Swim programme that they run this year, next year, then feeds into their competitive squads as the years go on. So if they aren't able to run their Learn to Swim programme, then their squad will likely suffer in subsequent years. So that's the whole balance of trying to get extra pool time for them to run their lesson programme. With regards to Strabane, again, we're already maxed out in terms of the site in Strabane, and it has its own challenges with Strabane Otters and them getting pool time as well, and there's a number of requests from them. Yeah, so and the point taken around the process around it all in terms of the club have been quite vocal to us. I know that contacted elected reps going back that they were going to bring proposals and all of the rest, and they were looking at one stage to come and address the committee as well. So we felt it would be better to have a discussion with members. But look, point taken on board around the process, and I don't have the answer to it today in my head how we get around it, but we'll just have to take it away and have a look at it and see how everything adds up with regards to that.
Thank you. Barry, the next indicated speaker is Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in. And look, I would agree with a lot of the rest of the speakers. Look, I know I'm looking at the email here from City Baths, and are from City of Derry Swimming Club. And it says here on the email very, very clear, we are seeking a further 7.5 hours, and this would bring us up to 18.3 hours, which would be 70% of our pandemic. And I think we need clarification, because we're talking about 2 hours on a Saturday morning here, and the ask and the report here is 12 hours. So I think, first of all, we need clarification on that. But Chair, I'm very supportive of supporting and doing what we can for the club as we move forward. And I know that means a piece of work for our officers, but look, I think as a council, we should be doing all that we can to support them. And that can only take place, I think one of the previous councillors said, through dialogue around the table. And I think it's important we get them in around the table and see what we can do, and hopefully meet meet some of their demands if we can't meet them all, and have that discussion. But very supportive in their ask here. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Devaney. I'm going to bring in Alderman Kerrigan and then Councillor Tierney at the end.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in. I'm going to be brief, but just we've rattled off that's the right wee bit here. But just for clarification in my own head there, you see your reference on Tuesday morning, that 6 to 7:30. Is that additional cost that we're going to be caught with, or what way are we covering that? Are we closed at that stage? And is this no? That's not the case. That staff are in at that stage anyway. It's just the case of having the pool facilities closed at that stage.
For yourself, Chair, we'll just be closing off 4 lanes for their squad. That means the public can't swim in those 4 lanes, but the pool's open at that time, yeah.
And just a wee follow on there, is there anyone there, or I know you've referenced there as well, the Saturdays, the 10 to 12, that the 2 pools there would be out of action. Anyway, you know, that both pools would be not open to public. Is there any way of rejigging that to one of them's a 9 to 9 till 11, or rather than that they're both closed at the same time, or whatever's handiest, but is that an option, or somebody from a 11 to 1 kind of way, rather than, as the issue seemed to be raised there, that both pools will be closed to the public for those 2 hours on Saturday morning? Was that kind of because council had their own learning to swim programme, and the city will have their own as well? So is that maybe an option if we felt that was causing difficulty?
Through yourself, Chair, City of Derry are in the pool those other hours, as are other bookers. They are looking at an additional 2 hours on a Saturday morning.
Thank you, Barry. Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Chair. In relation to the paper that's coming back, I would like to see, I get why people are saying the difference financially. I fully understand that. I will be keen to see that information myself. But I would also like to see, for those 2 hours on a Saturday morning in particular, the pool usage, not in pounds and pence, but in terms of people actually in the pool swimming recreationally. For many of us, Saturday morning is family time. It's a time when people might just undecidedly want to take the children swimming, or could every Saturday morning take the children swimming. That could be their wee thing. And I would like to know, obviously that didn't happen to Councillor Doyle, but I would like to know if that's displacement, it's about more than finance. It's about more than finance. It's about making sure that we are not reducing the service that we provide to the ratepayers, and making sure, as Councillor Boyle is saying, that people have an opportunity at the weekend, when things settle down, to take maybe a wee hour, spend it with their children, and do something. They devote a wee bit of time to their children. Now, no doubt, there's other things that they could do. They could go for a walk in St. Collins Park. They could do loads of things. But I want to know how many of them actually go swimming in those 2 hours. And so pool usage in that report would be useful. I regret, and it's not very often that you'll hear me saying this, I regret mentioning city baths, because this report actually isn't about city baths, it's about City of Derry Swimming Club and the hours that they require. While city baths, obviously, being having a knock-on impact on the number of swimming hours that we do have, I don't think that we need a city baths working group. it would be my understanding, and I think Councillor Harkin said that it should meet bi-monthly. I would hope that if this was to pass and we were setting up a City Bath working group, it would only meet maybe 2 or 3 times before it's ready to reopen again. Fingers crossed. But I would also expect, particularly because of the issues that we're aware of, and some of the concerns that we have, you know, once you bust walls, we were given all this information during the briefing, that information is going to come directly to this committee anyway, once it's available. So one would question, do we need a City Bath working group? But I would also expect that, given the issues within City Bath in terms of the plant and all of the issues that we're aware of, plus the financial implications that it has, surely that must be being looked at by the Capital Development Working Group at a very close, paying very, very close attention to it. So why would we want to set up another group to do what I can only imagine be the exact same thing? So we're not here to repeat work or to have working groups for working groups' sake. City Baths, in my opinion, from a personal point of view, will get a lot of attention, and should be getting a lot of attention from this council through the appropriate working groups and committees that we have. So I don't see any point in setting up the City Baths working group. In relation to Councillor Doyle's point about a council-wide solution, I don't think that would work, with respect, and I'll tell you for why. I remember when City Baths closed, trying to get some of the users from City Baths to go to Templemore was extremely difficult. Trying to get them to go to Strabane will just not happen. It will not fly, and it's not something that we could support. And I know Barry has said we're at capacity anyway, but regardless of the capacity issues, I just don't think it would work. So there's some of the issues that we would have, and we would like to see that report come back with extra information, particularly around the swimming, the capacity on those 2 hours on a Saturday morning in particular. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. I think that's all indicated speakers. So just taking the recommendations in the report 5.1, 5.2.
Chair, I would.
Yep, go ahead.
Through you, and I'm not sure whether you have to deal with Councillor Harkins first or not.
No, I'm going to deal with the paper first. Yeah.
Well, in terms of the paper, I would propose to defer accepting recommendation 5.1 and 2 until we get the extra information. I don't think we have enough information to make a decision, so I'll defer it. Okay. If that has to be until full council or until the next committee, whatever it may be. But I understand the pressures that City Derry are facing, fully understand them, and want to work to a solution. But there's other groups there that we need to consider as well. And until we have all that information, I don't think it's wise to make a decision. So I'll propose that we defer it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Tierney. Seconded by Councillor Doyle. Does anyone else want to comment on that proposal? Are we happy enough? Okay, members going to take that as unanimous. Members going to move on to the proposal we have from Councillor Harkin here to set up a City Baths working group. Can I ask for a seconder for the proposal? Members, we have no seconders for proposals, so that proposal falls. Members, I'm going to move on to item 14 in your pack, which is the new resident welcome pack, pages 107 to 130. And Barry is going to take this item.
Thanks, Chair. Members, the purpose of the report is to consult and to seek members' approval of a draft welcome pack for new arrivals into the council area. But subject to any members' additional views, is recommended that members approve the draft welcome packs in your appendix. Members, I'm not going to go into a whole pile of the detail in the report, but you'll see in the key issues bit Given the multiple requests to quickly develop another welcome pack, officers have reviewed and amended the welcome pack previously developed for the Syrian refugees and amended so that is relevant and applicable to all asylum seekers and refugees regardless of their country of origin. And please note that the draft pack is written in plain language in order for it to be easily translated into a range of languages. And since the report was written, members, we have sought quotes for translation into 6 languages, so that will be part of this. So there's a bit of detail there, and with regards to TEO's role in all of this, members, and the Good Relations team. So in terms of our Good Relation team convened a multi-agency forum established to support the Syrian repatriation programme, and the meeting at the end of June discussed support and arrangements for new residents within the district with relevant community and voluntary sector groups. During this meeting, key agencies were updated in the sports development programme that we brought in last month and will be off, and it was approved along with the Good Relations programme at committee. And we continue to engage with the Executive and Home Office to secure funding for any additional wraparound supports for new residents within the council area. Members, with regards to the finances around this, the draft welcome pack has been developed and designed by council officers, and it's an in-kind contribution. The translation costs will be taken through our Good Relations funding. So in terms of recommendation, members, that subject to any additional amendments and feedback from yourselves, it's recommended members approve the draft welcome pack attached and the issue of it to any relevant organisations and individuals to assist in welcoming new arrivals into the city and district.
Thanks very much for that. Does any member want to come in on this item? Yep, Lillian, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And can I please start by declaring an interest as the Director of Programs of the Northwest Migrants Forum? Chair, this new resident welcome pack is very welcome, and it's actually really timely. It is a much needed document for our new arrivals in the Northwest. Most of you would know that those people who are coming here have limited proficiency in English, and some of them have no idea of how the administrative system works. So it's a real need, and the language that has been used, the simple English language, is very welcome. It's very understandable. In fact, I'm quite impressed on that. I would also like to record my thanks to the team that has worked very quickly to compile this information. I note that it is an update of a previous welcome document, so it is a well-produced document. It's obviously, there's quite a lot of work that has gone into, but there are some very important information that is missing, which I have communicated directly to their officers through Karen. I welcome officers' positive response that the suggestion I made and the feedback that I provided will be incorporated into the welcome pack, and to ensure that the final document is comprehensive. Members, for your information and for the record, the number of omissions on the current draft, if it is tackled, could effectively improve the document. I have suggested that there should be a grassroots input before the document is printed, and I understand this has been accepted by officers, and I would also like to put it on record that I will be very happy to help the team initially with the additional feedback so that the next edition is comprehensive as it should be. Chair, through you, I've got a question for Barry, and I know he has given us information about quotes that has been sought for 6 languages. I still want to know how much will this cost, and do we know how many, what languages are these 6 languages, and how are these languages selected? Because since 2016, we've had very many different languages coming to the city, and I just want to understand the method that had been used to select those 6 languages.
Through yourself, Chair, no, that information, Lillian, has just been given to me before committee by an officer. So no, I'll get that detail and we'll get an email out to you tomorrow if you're happy enough with that.
Thank you. I'm happy enough with that. And through you, Chair, I have also made some suggestion on pre-existing retail services which have been omitted. And today, only this afternoon, actually, I met a Polish woman on my way home to attend this meeting today. And she was interested in getting some food stuff. And she wasn't aware that there's a Polish shop in Spencer Road. And I'm delighted to say she quickly went to that shop and got everything that she was looking for. This information is not included in the welcome pack, so it will be really useful to include that. I've also made some suggestion on additional information on how to register with a GP and dentist, key places of worship, and a suggestion on changes to be included in the advice section, and particularly also on the common travel area. So as I said, I'll be very happy to work with officers to ensure that this is a comprehensive document, because there's quite a lot of information that is very useful to new residents, but also to local community members, particularly host families of Ukrainians who may be who may not know where to get such information on how the Ukrainians can be supported, because this is something that we are coming across very much now in the city. There's another issue I want to raise, and this is on the language that we use and terminologies. Some of you may be aware that there is a debate going on how to write about ethnicity, and this includes words and phrases we use and words that we avoid, and how we describe ethnic minorities and different ethnic groups. You may know this, or you might not know this. The UK government have now stopped using the term BIM because it emphasizes on certain ethnic minority groups and exclude others. There is also a recognition that the terms can also mask disparities between different ethnic groups and create misleading interpretation of the data. So just for the record, in March 2021, and I have shared this information with Karen, I hope that you'll be able to circulate for officers and for the benefit of members too. The Commission on Race and Ethnic Disparities recommended that the UK government stop using the term BIM. One of the recommendations published in December 2021 was to refer to ethnic minority groups individually rather than as a single group. This was supported by research commissioned by the Race Disparity Unit, which found that people from ethnic minorities were 3 times more likely to agree than disagree that the term BIM was unhelpful. So I do realize that these are new terminologies. This is new to us here. And this is why I will not make a proposal tonight, because I will be planning to bring forward a motion to full council to formally ask that council stop using the term BIM. But I will make 2 requests. Through you, Chair, can I request Karen to share the link I shared with her earlier today with elected representatives, all of them, not just members of this committee. I think it is important for everyone to familiarize themselves with the recommendations made by the Commission on Race and Disparities, particularly if we are to make any decisions in regards to minority ethnic people in our city and district. And it is important we also familiarize ourselves with the actions that have already been taken to address concerns raised on these terms. And my second request is for council, after familiarizing yourselves with these terminologies, take the initiative and drop the use of these terms because they are unhelpful. And lastly, one very important issue I would like to mention is on the common travel area. While the guide mentions the border, it does not warn people that the 2 different jurisdictions do not allow freedom of movement. there's evidence this council is aware of this, because we have passed several motions on this particular issue. And we know that a lot of people seeking protection, and many of those who on work visas and students, unfortunately, cannot legally cross the border. So this is important piece of information, not just for new residents, but for host families and friends and local communities who may come in contact with the new residents. We know that there are so many people currently hosting new residents, and when there is great weather like now, people would want to run to the Nego and enjoy the beaches there or do sightseeing, and they may be breaking the law. So we need to inform them before. We do know that we are campaigning for this to change, but before it changes, we should protect our communities. And let me finish by emphasizing that this is a very well-produced guide. And as I said, I'm very impressed on the quick turnaround, but it can be improved even further with a few tweaks. And we need to get this right to spare council an additional expense in future. So thank you.
Lillian, thank you very much. The next on the speaker is Alderman Kerrigan.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in. And to be fair, I did note there, and Councillor Sinagar has touched on it there in regards to, it's not really the detail there in regards to your health centres or your, doesn't mention Ultimate Alvin Hospital as far as I see on it there, bits and pieces. But more just, I suppose, a couple of minor points there. Is it more, I suppose it is maybe more city focused on there. If you're looking at page 118 in the report, number 8, it's referencing your 3 bins, your black bin, your blue bin, your brown bin. If you're in the rural area, you don't have no brown bin. So if they happen to be out in the rural area, these individuals, if they have a home that has been placed in the rural area, they're not going to get it. Just wondering, again, just touching on it, your recycling centres, there's no mention of Dunnamana, there's no mention of Plumbridge, there's no mention of Newton Stewart. Is that just, are we just picking certain ones on it? And again, your libraries, are we, there's no Castleberry Library, there's no Newton Stewart Library. Is it just, are we going for the larger scale ones? But I'm just thinking it's more within the city here and maybe in just the downtown. It's not touching the rest of the rural areas, because I mean, I do know we have, and with Councillor Barr's comments, I'm not sure, and I'm going to be very careful in my language because I'm a wee bit parochial and the way I would speak. So there are individuals that are in Castleberg, who are originally from Sri Lanka there. There's a large number of them now working in some of the nursing homes. And you meet them, you speak to them, but it's getting that kind of knowledge to the likes of those people there, and they're not within the city. They're not on this end. They're in the rural area. So it's just opening it up now. Maybe you don't need to add those couple of wee things on. Maybe there's a specific reason for them, and I probably should have emailed those couple of wee queries through beforehand. But just touching on it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Kerrigan. Next speaker, Councillor Doyle.
Cheers, Chair. It's probably, well, it's just a thought, but I know that we when mayors were in committee, we had a discussion around, and I could be wrong, but I think it might have been Lillian who mentioned that at that point, pardon me, there were scenarios where people had been effectively knocked out of their bed in the morning and put in a taxi elsewhere. And we had been very concerned collectively around that. What I don't want to do is to be alarmist. But in this document, should we be looking at also including information around if people are very unsure of their rights with regards to that? Because you can imagine if we'll take the mayor scenario. If someone is staying in a mayor's accommodation and they're basically, that scenario befalls them. That they don't necessarily have any information in terms of, their rights with regards to legal representation or anything along that lines. I'm far from an expert, but I'm just thinking, is there a way that we could maybe incorporate that? But if it's something that maybe is for another document or for, to get that information out another way, I'm happy to do that, but I just think it would be important to, it was important to raise it. Thanks.
Thank you for those comments, Councillor Doyle. Councillor Sina, I'm going to bring you back in again here.
Thank you, Chair. And I agree with the previous speaker. I think the welcome pack needs to be comprehensive enough to meet the needs of all users. So can I just propose that we defer this item until the updates that I have proposed, and also until we get feedback from other groups that are working with ethnic minorities, and their feedback has been incorporated into the document, then bring it back to the committee.
Councillor Doyle is saying that. Yep, Barry, you want to come in on that?
Yeah, just quickly through yourself, Chair. Yeah, that's a good suggestion, Councillor. We will do that, and the officer team will gather a bit of information, but we'll also go back to the executive office as members are aware the responsibility lies, in terms of this is our good relations team pulling something together through the good relations budget. So there's a lot of very good comments from members there. And we'll also highlight to them and ask them of their role going forward. But yeah, happy enough for that. We'll defer it to the next committee.
Yep, Councillor Boyd.
Just an addition also, Chair, and I just thanks for this report, and there's very comprehensive information in it, but in terms of accommodation locator, we have one hotel in Strabane, and it's not even added, it's not even on the list, but there's hotels in County Donegal and Antrim on the list, and as well as the B&Bs, we've got some B&Bs in the Castlederg area, and they're not on it as well. So, I mean, it's trivial, but it's important to be on there as well.
Thank you, Councillor Boyd. Members, of the proposal is that we defer this item. We're going to take on board all the comments made by members, and we'll bring it back to a future committee for agreement. Yep, everyone happy with that? Yep. Okay, members, the next number of items between 15 and 21 are open for information, but if you want to raise any issue here, please let me know. We have Councillor Doyle first. Go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. It's in relation to item 17. I was a bit surprised reading this for a number of reasons. One, in that I remember the discussions that we had about this, or that were had at the time, in that in relation to our own policy, I think it might have been Councillor Harkin at the time, to be fair to him, that raised this, but from memory, our policy refers to not being within X yards of an educational facility or something along those lines. And it was very clear as a crow flies that this was, yards effectively from Pilot Row. And that was certainly the basis on which I felt very strongly that this was the right decision, that we have made the right decision in this. But I know Philip's not in the call. Maybe someone could maybe ask him at some point. My understanding is from all the time that I've been here that any time that council seems to make a decision like this to turn down, particularly an amusements application, that when it's appealed in court, we seem to lose pretty much all the time. And I'm wondering if we need to review in any way how we address these, because I'm 100% confident that we made the right decision at the time, just given that one issue, that it was so close to Pilot Row. So I'm wondering, do we need to engage with, I don't know who we would engage with, the court service or someone along, those lines, to understand how they're making decisions that maybe are very clearly in contrary to our policy, when we're making decisions that are very clearly along the lines of the policy that we have in place, because it still mind boggles. I mean, even how in William Street, obviously, we've got Pilot Row effectively behind the street, and now we've got two licensees with regards to amusements on the street. And that's no, I'm not being disparaging of them or their business, but the reality is that we have a policy in place, but it always seems to fail when it gets to a point where someone physically just goes, well, don't agree with you, and they go to court. So be interested, Chair, if we could get some sort of a report back from the city solicitor with regards to the validity of our the current policy and the outcome of all of the different court cases that have been taken in terms of appeals, to see how we can maybe do this a bit better. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Seamus, is that something that we can leave with you to pick up with Philip and bring a report in the committee? Yep, have enough, Councillor Doyle. Yep, Councillor Tierney, you looking in?
Yep, well, just on the same paper, I proposed at that particular meeting that we didn't grant that licence for the reasons that Councillor Doyle outlined. It was, in my opinion, too close to Pilot Row. Now, members may remember that, in my view, they went round the world for a shortcut from this building to get to Pilot Row, and they didn't go the most direct way. I also raised at that particular time that it was also my view that they went to what I would class as the old front door of Pilot Row, which was right around the front that looks out onto Roswell Street. There's a door closer, and it was my opinion that they should have went like we do within planning and go to the perimeter of the site, and that would have absolutely made it. Now, it was, even though they went to the front door, it was still within the 200 metres, but it would have definitely fallen within it at that particular time. The reason I'm still happy that we made the right decision based on our policy. I'm still happy that we made the right decision for that particular area as well. I'm disappointed that the court overturned that decision, but the reason I believe that the court overturned that decision was because we made that decision based on our policy. The court made their decision based on the law, which unfortunately on this occasion didn't add up, and that's where it fell down. But I think Councillor Doyle's right. You know, I don't think that the court gave any weight towards this council's position or policy, and that's something that we should be definitely looking at. But I think in relation to the policy, it was we done it towards the policy, and the court done it towards the law of it. You know, so that's the unfortunate side of it in this occasion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Members, I have no further indicated speakers on item 17 or any other items open for information. Yep, so I'm going to get a proposer and seconder to move into confidential. Proposed Councillor Doyle, seconded Councillor Farr. We'll just give a few moments here to get into confidential, folks.